order. Today is May 23rd. We're here for the superintendent's workshop. Mrs. Ork is running a few minutes late, so she'll be coming in momentarily. It is being televised, so smile pretty, and I'll turn it over to Annette.
Thank you, Mr. Searcy. The workshop, the purpose of the workshop is to share information and seek direction from the board. So we have three topics today, three areas that we want to present information. The first and probably the most lengthy today will be the budget, our ongoing work with the budget. This is budget update number 3. As we go through the budgeting process, Mr. Morrison and his staff have been doing a lot of work. Our school-based personnel have been doing a lot of work with the zero-based budgeting process and our departments and that kind of thing. So we want to give you an update on where we are, some numbers and that kind of thing. We're also going to have a presentation from Mrs. Shields and Dr. Arnett about the Career and Technical Center. We've talked about that before, but this project that we're going to do at the ACE campus, they're going to give you an update on that and the plans for that. And then we have a presentation about ESE services, services for our students with disabilities throughout the district, our work with the DMG, the District Management Group, used to be District Management Council. They've been aiding us as we make changes in that area. Some of them you're familiar with, some of you may not be familiar with, so we thought we'd bring you a presentation today on all those different things. So we're going to turn it over to Mr. Morrison as we dive into the budget for the 17-18 school year. This is update number 3. Mr. Morrison.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rendell. Good afternoon, board members, those in the audience, and those who may be viewing us over the internet. Before we get started, just want to make sure all board members have the appropriate handouts in front of them. We have a copy of today's presentation, as well as a preliminary budget book that we put together, as well as a copy of the FRS rate sheet, which impacts our budget for next year. For the purposes of today's conversation, the extreme right-hand column that says 2017-18 change, 0.40% is what we will be kind of working with as we go through the presentation. So, as we all are aware, the legislative session officially adjourned sine die on May the 5th. Revenues that we have in the preliminary budget are based on the conference report. The FRS estimates are the same that we have put into the budget as well as the preliminary budget. But before we get into the preliminary budget itself, I'll just kind of make some important points regarding the preliminary budget. It's just preliminary. The numbers will change. They will change. It is not a final budget, but rather a first look at next year's budget by estimating expenditures and including known impactors and recommended reductions. Estimates are subject to revision as information may change in the preparation of the budget. On the revenue side of the house, the state revenues have been infused into the budget based on the May 5th conference report. The average statewide millage has been infused into the millage rate calculation. I'll show that for you in a moment. The projected FTE as approved by the state in their FTE estimating conference that was recently held has been entered into, and I'll show you that as we go through the book. The statewide best and brightest revenues and expenditures, both sides, have been zeroed out right now because we don't know if the same teachers will be on staff next year due to retirements, resignations, staff turnover. This will be amended as soon as we get that information from the state. On the expenditure side, the preliminary budget does not include any roll forward funds because those balances have not been determined as of June 30th yet. So those will be subject to final closeout. So what we did was the projected expenditures for this year is we kind of stopped the ball rolling as of April 30th, and then we projected out through what we think we'll be spending through June 30th. Then it also budgets for the same amounts in 17-18 based on expected similar spending patterns. The salary budget estimates, which are the hardest, will change based on retirements, resignations again, and replaced with new hires and the impact of reorganizations. State categorical budgets such as school recognition, media, teacher lead, those kinds of things have not been distributed out to the schools but have been held in a reserve account at this point until we have the eligible teachers on staff as of September 1st. Charter schools, the Florida Department of Education has not released their 2017-18 estimating revenue worksheet, which is what the charter schools use to determine their funding. So what we have done, we have modified the 2016-17 revenue worksheet with the 17-18 numbers and try to use their recalibrated projections to arrive at their funding estimates for next year. So estimates for water, sewer, garbage, and communication, and some IRCEA supplements have also been included in the budget. Expenditure appropriations for the construction of the vocational center that Dr. Brendel just spoke about at the ACE, utilizing the workforce education fund balance, has not been included at this time because the estimates are not available at this time. We're still gathering information for those estimates. The projected fund balance has not been updated again as the impact of the expenditure remaining of the millage funds for this year have not been fully infused. And again, the drawdown of the funds from adult ed have not been included as, again, we do not have the estimates for going forward. And finally, staffing allocations have been updated to match what's in terms for school and site-based based on their staffing formula. So just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what we have done so far and some of the information that we're still waiting on in order to complete a budget. So this today, what is today is just a preliminary in front of you. It will get more granular and more granular as we approach the tentative budget, which is very specific. So dealing with the 2017-18 legislative session, there's a couple bills to talk about. House Bill 989, instructional materials. It allows parents and residents of the county to provide the school district with evidence that an instructional material for adoption by the district does not meet state criteria. It may contain, if it contains prohibited content or is otherwise inappropriate or unsuitable. It also allows county residents to contest the adoption of an instructional material and object to the use of a material made available to students. It requires the process for contesting the adoption of an instructional material to provide for an impartial hearing officer. That's a new addition to statute, including the residents. Prior it was just parents. It requires the school districts to provide access to library materials upon written request. It requires school districts to maintain a current list of purchased instructional materials on their website. It also specifies that an instructional material must be free of content that is pornographic or harmful to minors in order to be recommended for inclusion on the state-adopted list, and that any material used in the classroom must also be free of such content. Excuse me. House Bill 1109. The bill revises private school student eligibility by allowing a student in a non-FHSAA member private school to participate in sports at the school where the student could choose to attend pursuant to our controlled open enroll policy, provided that the school has not reached capacity as determined by the school board. Senate Bill 436, religious expression. Under student rights, express religious beliefs in writing or oral assignments must be free from discrimination. They're allowed to wear jewelry that displays a religious message or symbol to the same extent that secular types of jewelry. Engage in or organize religious groups before, during, and after the school day in the same manner and to the same extent that secular student organizations and groups are permitted. School districts must allow a religious group to the same access to the school facilities or assembling as given to secular group, or allow a religious or secular group to advertise or announce its meetings. And permit schools personnel to participate in religious activities on school grounds that are student-initiated and at reasonable times before or after the school day, as long as the activities are voluntary and do not conflict with the duties and responsibilities of such school personnel. House Bill 293. Further on in my presentation, I do say that none of these bills have been presented to the governor. Since I did this presentation, I believe this one has been sent to the governor for signature. The bill directs the Florida Department of Education to issue a competitive solicitation for a contract to conduct a comprehensive study of states with high-performing students in grades 6 through 8 in reading and math based on the state's performance on the NAEP scores, NAEP progress. The bill also deletes a requirement for middle grade students to complete the career and education planning course. It doesn't prohibit the school district from offering it, it just is not a requirement. House Bill 7109 is the back-to-school sales tax holiday from August 4th to 6th. It was signed by the officers and presented to the governor, and he must act on this bill by June 1st. So the conforming bill. The conforming bill is about 278 pages or so, the education train bill. A conforming bill is a bill that amends Florida statutes to provide for specific changes in the general appropriations bill. And there's a pretty extensive list of the language that's in House Bill 7069. I think Mr. Frost did a very good job at the last board meeting outlining some of these, that's in the conforming bill. But just real quick, currently for AP, IB, industry certified, CAPE, the amount of bonus that is given to teachers based on number of passes is capped at $2,000. This removes the cap. It continues funding for the lowest 300 program. The student attire incentive, there was a requirement. So let's say you had a solid shirt and a pants and you wanted to do plaid or that sort of thing, you're allowed to do that. It establishes the School of Excellence, schools that are in the top 80th percentile in terms of points, or in your category, such as an elementary. It gives flexibility to the school. Some of what is similar to in the principal autonomy program for the principal to run the school. Teacher certification requirement modifications. It essentially allows teachers to obtain their certification, their permanent certification, a little bit easier. Civics literacy, it creates Americans Founders Month, and it also encouraged teaching about our founding fathers. Charter school standard contract, it requires the use of a charter school standard contract, and no amendments are allowed to that contract. It allows high-performing charter schools to replicate in high-needs, low-performing areas. Capital outlay sharing with charter schools, it requires school districts to share their 1.5 mil proceeds. It eliminates the Algebra 2 end-of-course exam. Sort of consolidates the testing window sort of to the end of the school year. With the paper pencil option, there's like a 2-week window where you cannot administer the test no earlier than May 1st. And for all other computer-based testing, there's like a four-week window. And these are just all statewide standard assessments, not district tests. Grades 3 through 6, English language arts and math, paper pencil, there's a requirement, and state assessments. There are some elements of this in Senate Bill 964 and House Bill 773 with the SAT and the ACT study. It determines if these can be used in lieu of the Florida standards. School board member visitation of schools. Basically, school board members can visit schools at any time you wish. It also establishes the schools of hope. As I mentioned, this is for persistently low-performing schools. C or below for 2 years, and also, if you enter into a district-managed turnaround, then you can become a school of hope that has certain options laid out. You can close the school. You can have a management company run it, served by charter, or a district-managed charter option. Title I funding, it caps the indirect cost, administrative cost, at 8% at the district level. The best and brightest teacher and principals, it expands the program to include principals. Teachers are eligible, highly effective teachers are eligible for about a $1,200 bonus. There's about $233 million or so in the budget for that. Recess, this was part of the recess initiative. It is not included in the PE time. It's about 20 minutes of free play. That's in the bill. Autism treatment language, whereby if a student is getting treatment for autism, they can count that as an excused absence. And sunscreen. You can use sunscreen without a doctor's note.
This is what our legislature?
Yes, sir. We have a bill that governs sunscreen use. And then the final one is a shared use task force. There's been some efforts to try to open up our facilities and playgrounds and tracks and that sort of thing to the public, and they're just directing that we look at those issues to see if there's any way to work that out. So it's an extensive bill, as you can see. I believe it has not been submitted to the governor as yet, so we will see how that goes. Bills that did not pass. Senate Bill 104, computer coding instruction. There was a push to have computer coding count for a foreign language requirement. House Bill 139, local tax referenda. Basically, you'd have, in order to pass a referenda, you'd have a 60% threshold that you'd have to meet. Student with disabilities, I didn't get into that one much, but it has to do with some restraint and seclusion issues with ESE students. Committee on Early Grade Success, kind of looking at VPK and their early success rates. That did not pass. Senate Bill 808, maximum class size, to institute the penalty for class size at the school-wide average. We would still have to do 18, 22, 25, but the penalty would be assessed on a school-wide average. And the last one, 964, is the Education Accountability Act. This was Senator Montford's bill that deals with VAM, SAT, ACT, paper pencil option, that sort of thing. I believe that one did not make it. However, there are some elements of that in 7069.
Frost.
Right, yes, sir.
Thank you. There are a couple things, especially 1229, early grade success. That's actually in 7069.
It's in there? Okay.
It is, yes. It's like Prego. It's in there. And it's understandable not to hit everything that's in this bill because there's a lot in there. And just a couple other things I noted that weren't mentioned that may be of interest to this board are a review of the English language arts standards. So if you're unhappy with the standards, that the review is in the mix. Also, students who transfer to private schools, whether it's in their senior year or whatever, the responsibility or the grading goes back to the school of record. That was also in 7069. It makes voluntary pre-K charter schools obvious that they're public schools. Right now, some actually have to file as private schools, which is clearly in violation of the statute. It also ends automatic renewal for teachers earning highly effective or effective, also known as tenure light. It removes that. Also curriculum review of three subject areas in the middle schools. And reading. And reading deficiency, it requires kindergartner screening and must be used to identify students in need of intervention in grades K through 3. So some very profound early learning, early literacy initiatives that were candidly championed by our very, very good Representative Aaron Grawl. That was also in there. And the Committee on Early Grade Success, and these line numbers are for the draft version because that's what I started with, not the enrolled version. It's in 6039 through 6117. And also there is early childhood music incentive pilot program, which would sunset after 5 years, I believe. So those are just a few of the plus-ups, if you will, in 7069.
Ms. Justice.
I'm just a little confused, and maybe someone could help me to understand. If this has been voted on and passed, why has it not been given to the governor and the budget as well, considering the fact that so many school districts are waiting to kind of try to understand where their budget's going to be and what their funding's going to be? So is anyone able to explain that?
I'm not as familiar with the legislative process to if there's a specific deadline by which the governor must receive it, but I know after he gets it, he has 15 days to act. He can sign it into law, he can leave it alone, and it automatically goes into law, or he can veto it.
It's on his desk now.
No.
Not 7069.
Not on his
Not
desk?
7069, no, sir.
What are we doing talking about it?
Well, because
It will be.
it will be eventually, and there's a lot of discussion around the state, as to whether or not the governor should veto it or pass it. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, and I don't know, I didn't see it in previewing the budget, but Indian River County has 665 highly effective rated teachers this year, according to some numbers. And if we take that $1,200 and we give it to those teachers, that's $798,000 that this district would stand to see flow into and directly to our teachers. For those who are effective, that is a guaranteed 1,200. The 800 is an up to based on funding availability.
Right.
So it may not be $800, but if it were to be the maximum amount, that would be another $294,400 for our teachers, directly to the teachers. Well, you know, it passes through our payroll system, but without, you know, pass and go or those things. So that's roughly a revenue stream for Indian River County of $1,092,400 contained in 7069. And those are above and beyond the FEFP, which we'll get to in a minute here, but that's...
I'm a little confused on that one as well. I'm just trying to understand why it would be given like a bonus rather than a raise.
It's a great question. Well, as you're learning, there is a collective bargaining process, and the union is very much in control of that, along with the district. And those raises have to be negotiated. The legislature cannot mandate a raise, so they're doing the best they can with the revenue they have. And so, rather than take 3 years to negotiate a deal, they're just saying, "Hey, here's a bonus. Here's how we're going to flow those funds directly to teachers." So rather than have it go through a million iterations and things like that, they want to impact education immediately. So that's the reason they've given.
Yes, ma'am.
And to add on that, the reason, I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm just saying the reason it will not be, it usually is not a raise like that is because then it becomes FRS contribution, both on us and forever in perpetuity, as well as compounded year by year. So that's another reason why they would not want to do that, because that's going to pull from their federal
And speaking to year after year after year, the
state.
now best and brightest had been, you know, tied to ACT, SAT scores, which, you know, we can have different opinions on. However, the $1,200 for highly effective teachers is not at all tied to that. You don't need to produce score. That's basically just the district will say how many teachers they have, and the state will issue funds in that amount. So, you know, there's a lot of confusion out there, some of it I believe intentional, but the facts are that one need not be an ACT, SAT top 80% or top 77 percentile, which is somewhere in the bill. That's a few years down the road. But for the next 3 years, they've allocated these funds. So doing the best they can.
So, and Mr. Chair, the reason we're reviewing 7069 and the other actions of the legislature so far is we need to plan. And we need to plan for these potential changes and that kind of thing. So that's one of the reasons we reviewed that.
How do you plan if you don't know? I mean, if the governor can veto it.
That's the best information we have
Do you have
today.
two plans?
That's the
One
best
with or
information
without?
we have.
Okay.
If he vetoes the bill, then we start over, or just
We
Two
adjust.
plans.
we adjust.
Wouldn't it benefit us to know? I mean, I'm in agreement with you, Mr. Searcy. You would think that they would want to get the budget and the bill to the governor so that he can make a choice, so that we can, as school board members, and so our finance
Plans.
can actually, because I mean, the job here is to educate students, not to play games with.
Well, I believe what it says here is he's not playing games. This bill is on his desk, and he has, no?
He has not received, the only one that he has received in this presentation is House Bill 293 for the middle school study, but other than that,
But it could be.
the
It's ready to be submitted.
7069 is not on his desk.
But it
But
could
it
be.
passed, is
But
your
it
question.
passed. It could be.
That is the education conforming bill this year, yes.
You're right, We're there's talking about
problem.
70-60.
I mean, I'm, is
7069,
It's bureaucrat
sorry.
it
at
politics?
its worst.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead, Carter.
Okay. So just some highlights of what has been passed, if I may refer to it in that manner. The state GR, or general revenues, using the FEFP is about $7.7 billion compared to about $7.6 billion last year. The base student allocation is $41,3364, which is down from $41,60.71 in the prior year. It appropriates about $413,950,000, which Mr. Frost kind of gave a breakdown a moment ago. $233 million, almost $234, is for best and brightest principals. About $30 million is for Gardner scholarships. and about 15 million or so provisions related to statewide assessments, and the rest of it is for other funding provisions, which include the Schools of Hope.
So for those not familiar, what is the Gardner Scholarship?
That is for former Senator Andy Gardner. This is for students who do not attend public schools or private schools. They can use these funds for ESE-type services. They've actually included 2 more disabilities, if you will, for extra therapies, that sort of thing. You can use those funds for that purpose.
Okay, so, but these are special needs students?
Right.
Special needs students, yes. I'm sorry.
Students with disabilities, correct.
Students with disabilities.
So with the McKay Scholarship, those students are receiving letters, ask them to, if they want to opt in. I don't know that those parents are getting letters from Gardner. How, is that an application, like somebody has to know and seek it out? And do the people of this district know that they have to do that? If it's a
That would be something under ESE, which I'm not quite sure the process myself.
You know what I'm saying? Because I know, we all know that the McKay within our
Right.
district gets a letter that says, do you want, and then we have to settle up at the end of it. But here, I don't know that our parents even know about it, and if they're not getting letters, so. That would
Well,
be something that would be interesting to find out. in the
We can
file.
ask that question in the later presentation.
Great.
Because we'll have the ESE staff up here, but I'm
ESE
pretty
staff.
sure whenever we have an IEP meeting with the students with disabilities and their families, that all their options are presented to them.
Okay.
But we'll make sure.
So next steps, the governor, as we mentioned, may sign the bill into law. He may veto it. Other than Senate bill, other than House Bill 7109, none of the bills at the time, as of 5/18 when I did this, were sent to the governor. House Bill 293 was given to him, and he has until June 2nd to sign it. Again, when he's presented with a bill, he has 15 days to act on it.
When are they going to present them? Do you, I mean, how do we know?
No one knows, sir. Next steps again, next session is around the corner, believe it or not.
September?
September,
Committee
committee meetings will begin. It's an odd year, so the session actually starts earlier in January, which for finance folks is a good thing, because then we have a little extra time to work on the budget prior to its implementation in July 1. So you've kind of seen this slide before, and a little bit the variation. The governor's recommendation going into the legislative session would have yielded 4.2 million for the school district. While going through the session, the Senate Appropriations Committee recommended an increase of about 4 million in their FEFP. The House offer, as we've discussed in the last meeting, was $276,000, and the final conference report, which you have a copy of in front of you, this document, if you could pull this document for a moment. And if you go to page number 2, and again, we are always line 31, that's our district number. And you can see the 2016-17 February budget, if you will, is $126,902,066. And 2017-18, based on the conference report, is $127,627,959, or an increase of $725,893, or 0.7%, excuse me. Total funds per student last year was $7236.98, and funds per student next year is about $39.03 higher, or 0.54%.
But in the last slide, it says that the base allocation went down,
Yes.
but the
So if
overall went up?
Yep, so if you look at page 1, of the conference report, sorry, my bad, page 1, at about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about the 8th line down where you see base student allocation, says 4160.71. You see that? That was for last year. And then for the conference report, based on Senate Bill 2500, is 4133.64, which went down.
So now we're just talking about pockets, right? So let's say we were expecting $10 and $5 from the left pocket, $5 from the right pocket, and suddenly we're getting $11, $4 from the left pocket, $7 from the right pocket. Does it make sense to draw attention to the $4 from the pocket, or the net overall increase to our students?
The net overall increase, which is why I spoke about the 727601, which is a $39.03 increase in funds per student.
And just to be clear, that doesn't include the potential teacher bonuses of a little over $1 million and.
This is strictly the FEFP. The best and brightest is on the GAA side.
Got it.
So in summary, when you look at FEFP funding for next year, you look at the fourth calculation, the $126 million is broken out between local revenues of about $83,408,200 versus total state revenue of $43.4 million, about a 66 to 34% split. And the final conference report is about a 67 to 33 split, with local revenues inching up and state revenues inching down. You can see local revenues go up by about 1.7 million versus state revenues decreasing by 996. So it does show an increase. If we go to page 6 of your preliminary budget book, this book, it sort of gives you a blow-by-blow, if you will, the detail of the components of the FEFP. And it starts essentially on line 7. When it works its way down through the ESE guaranteed allocation, the SAI, and all the categoricals. In addition, it summarizes the total state funding by adding in class size and discretionary lotto on lines 25 and 26. So you see the decrease in the state funding versus the increase in the local funding for an overall increase of the 725, 893 rounded. So the statewide average for the millage rate, I just want to draw that to your attention again, which is on page 1 of the conference report. Under required local effort millage, you can see the buy down of the millage or the rolling back of the conference report. It's 4.322. Okay? And what does that mean for a local taxpayer? So you can see the 4.322 are about a 5.26% decrease in the required local effort. The 0.748 is the discretionary operating capital at 1.5, and the special millage referendum, which has been voted on, this is the first year of the 0.5. So looking at millage rate to millage rate for prior year and next year is about a 4.59% decrease, or 0.34%, excuse me, 0.34 mils. Again, just, I know what you're going to ask me.
Yes.
This is assuming that you levy the maximum for capital, maximum for discretionary operating, because you can levy otherwise,
We could levy rollback, right?
if you wanted to.
Also, this RLE reduction, is it a true reduction, or has it been bought down and provide those same funds provided from a different pocket, if you will?
I'm not sure of the answer of that. Last year, there was a deliberate effort to roll back the millage rate. This year, I think it was more of just holding it constant, as opposed to buying it down with state funds. I'm not sure that process was done this year.
But the RLE was engineered, if you will, to be lower, or to provide less because another funding source was available. The state funds.
State funds were available, which I'm not sure if they used that to buy it on the RLE this year, because they kind of floated the RLE this year as opposed to specifically buying it down. If you looked at the conference report last year,
Yes.
you see where there was a deliberate buy down of the millage. I'm not sure this was done this year. I think it's going forward, there was at least on the House side, an effort not to try to increase the RLE and increase local property taxes as a result of that.
Right, but even though we see these come down, we see the net funding to the district per student increased
Yes.
by roughly $39.
Yes, that's in the conference report, yes, sir.
Carter, one question. On about line 11 there, on page 1, it's got a .748 mil compression. What in the world is that?
That is for districts that do not levy, poorer districts, if you will, do not levy up to the state average of what that generates. So in the formula, there is a provision that allows them to get additional funding to bring them up to the state average of what that generates. So it's different from this .748 that you levy at a local level. There's actually a page that shows that. 19.
So we always levy to the max, right?
Yes, sir.
So if we didn't levy to the max, the state would come in and supplement us?
There is a specific section of statute that even if you levied lower than the .748, that they would essentially bring it up to, I think it's .6 something, I forget the number exactly. However, then you would leave money on the table for other school districts because the statewide budget assumes that you're going to levy the maximum. The .748 is only for districts that do not levy the state average because they have lower property values.
Good question. Okay.
Yes, sir, Sean.
Thank you. Now, under capital projects, it has 1.5 mils as the rate in 2016, 2017,
Yes.
1.5 mils, and then the increase or decrease is 0. But above that, we see that property values are increasing at 6.79%. So wouldn't it also be possible to say that the increase is 6.79% based on the assumption that we are going to, that this board has historically levied the full 1.5 mils? So wouldn't that same 1.5 mils produce more revenue this year than last?
In the capital, yes.
Yes.
But not in the general fund.
Roughly 1.4 million?
Roughly 1.4 million, which we are required by law to have a balanced 5-year plan. And in that 5-year plan, we have already taken into account the increase in property values based on the state's economic and demographic research information. So that's already in the balanced 5-year plan that's been submitted to the state.
Okay. So we figured in 6.79%?
I'm not sure if it was 6.79% in the
Six.
EDR. It kind of fluctuates because they estimate it.
Right, absolutely. I think it was 6%. So what are we estimating growth to be over the next 4 years?
Growth in terms of FTE?
No. You mentioned that that is factored in. What numbers are we using for the next 4 years?
I'm using the EDR numbers.
Okay.
What numbers?
The state has an economic and demographic research arm, and every year they have what they call an ad valorem estimating conference. And what they will do is that they will sit down and try to estimate, based on various factors, the value of property throughout the state, entire state, for the next several years. We use those numbers to help us create our 5-year plan on the capital side.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
But if 769 passes the desk of the governor, what is the amount we would be sharing out to charter? Because that'll ruin that 6.7 million.
1.1.
So that's, then
Depends.
we're going to balance out.
Well, it's the
depends.
House version, which I said we could use.
It depends.
But then we
The
will have no
language, and we're getting into capital a little bit, but the language, I believe in the House version, gives the state the flexibility whether or not they are going to fund the state charter school capital outlay or not. So depending upon what the budget looks like at the state level, that could fluctuate.
But I
But
think
currently, I'm sorry,
in 2,500, it was 50 million to
50,
district schools, 50
50.
million to charter schools.
50-50,
So
correct.
it was 75 million last year, and it was about $289 per student at public charter schools in PICO funds. So we would anticipate that to be slightly lower, just on pure dollar volume, and also more students participating because there are more qualified public charter schools this year. So what you would see is first, what districts can do is pay down their existing debt, which is a
Correct.
far better.
That's the formula, yes.
Right. The formula that was presented before would have been about a 1.6
Yeah, that's
and
what we showed
change
the last
million impact, whereas the one that finally passed was roughly 1.1 million.
That's correct.
So, which, would protect a lot of districts, including ours, our bond rating and things like that. So it's a far better version, if you will, than previously.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So the 1.1 million that we'll be paying to the charters if this bill passes, Is that based on per student?
Yeah,
How do we-
there is a formula that we use that is actually detailed in the House bill, or 7069. It gives you the steps that you follow through how to calculate that. So that was the estimate based on the House language. So the millage rate in the general fund, I guess
I have one
I'm
more
sorry.
question
Go
on
ahead.
that slide, please. Under special referendum millage,
Yes.
we see that the percent, excuse me, the percentage goes down 16.67%, but aren't net taxable revenues about the same, or is it 16% less as well? That's why I like numbers
Sure.
rather than percentages.
So if you look at page 8 of your, and I was going to get there, of your budget book.
Budget.
Sorry.
Oops, sorry.
There it is, special millage.
On line 19,
Yep.
it's about $8.4 million. Now, don't forget that July 1st, the property appraiser has to certify that number.
Right.
So there will be swings, if you will, in the estimated amount of revenue.
Okay, so there actually is about $1 million roughly.
Yep.
There's a.
Well, that's almost exactly the amount of teacher bonuses that would be in 76.
Ms. Justice.
I just wanted to say there's a $1 million decrease.
Right.
Yes. Any, move on? Okay. So based on the statewide average, and again, this is just the statewide average, this is not specific to Indian River. As I've always said and shown, when we get to the tentative budget hearing, the Florida Department of Education sends us the memorandum with the millage rate that you are required to levy, which is the required local effort. So that millage would be specific to at that time. So what does this mean to an Indian River County taxpayer? The same information is on page 2 of your budget book, but I can show you here. So based on the required local effort, this year, in 2017-18, a taxpayer can expect to pay about $42 less in required local effort. Again, this assumes that there's no increase in assessed valuation. Of course, we have, as we pointed out, that assessed valuations went up by 6.79%. So what we're really talking about is the bottom half
False
of this,
assumption.
just to show
Okay.
what it would be standing still.
Got it.
So the assessed valuation is about $206,000 because of the 3% Save Your Homes cap. So the taxable basis goes from $175,000 to $181,000 because of the cap. So overall, depending upon your assessment, again, I always put that caveat, and you should be seeing at least $17.08 less in taxes paid next year.
Again, that's if your home saw no appreciation in
No,
in
if
No,
market
it
you're-
has
value.
no, no.
appreciation.
0.79%.
You provided for that.
Okay,
It's
6,000.
6.79%, but the Save Your Homes caps it at 3%.
got it.
So in reconciling this, the funding increase per final legislative conference report is about $725,000, as we pointed out. We have to set aside restricted funds, such as SAI, student transportation, teacher classroom supply. Those funds flow right through to teachers, and Safe Schools. We utilize those funds to pay for our SROs. Reserve, as we have pointed out, the calculation report coming from the state does not have the reserve for the McKay Scholarship last year, or this year rather. We had a $615,000 deduction. So netting out to about $42,000, which again, if we have a proration next year, we would be in negative funding. So we've talked about these impactors for next year. We have the second year installment of the deficit and safe harbor transfer to the insurance fund, the full year recurring cost of the health insurance increase, teacher salary increase per RCA collective bargaining agreement, as well as performance pay based on our collective bargaining agreements. An impactor, which is a loss of revenues to the budget, is $897,000 because the loan to Osceola has expired. Increase in Florida retirement rates. The rate sheet, I handed you a copy of that, is a 0.40% increase. For the general fund, it's about $304,000. Recently, as we approved, the board approved the full-year cost of the IRAD expansion into 6 through 8 is to about $200,000. Increase in property casualty premium, as well as, you may remember at the impasse, we had a $27 per member per month as part of the impasse resolution that the board did, so we have to pick up at least 3 more months of that from July 1 through 10/1. So our total budget impactor is at about $6.8 million. There's one TBD at this point, which is the internal auditor for the board's audit committee. The next meeting is next Tuesday, May 30th at noon in this room, so the audit committee eventually will decide. Sorry?
Justice.
Thank you, sir. It says internal auditors. My understanding that hadn't been decided. Would it be internal or external auditing firm to be used?
The audit committee did have some discussion, and it seems to be in favor of an external firm as opposed to a person. Is that what I'm sure?
Right, so it says internal auditor.
Right, we use the term internal, and it should just be,
Oh, okay.
But it is.
It is an internal
I
auditor.
read the minutes. and it-
Internal,
There's a difference between an internal accounts auditor, which is auditing like your fundraisers, your football, your athletics, that sort of stuff at the high schools, like, for example, versus an internal auditor, which is what this is for the audit committee.
Okay, I just read through the minutes and I thought that this was a little confused.
Okay. I haven't seen the minutes, so we'll have to take
an
a look.
external firm that
I
performs
understand.
an internal audit
The
function.
internal audit function.
Right, but it's internal
Internal, yeah.
auditor, which would be
Internal.
That's like CPA, the term that.
okay, I'm sorry. Thank you for the clarification.
So the following are the superintendent's 2017-18 budget reduction recommendations. As you know, we've been going through a zero-based budget process for our schools and departments. And what you're about to see is looking at our budget from a district perspective, looking at projects. We do track a lot of information by specific project numbers that are outside of the school and department budget. So, for example, you'll have one-time costs that we had in 2016-17 that we don't anticipate budgeting for next year, or we may have had a budget that we put in place this year that we don't have to budget as much for next year. So, for example, the first one is the reduction in the safe harbor deficit transfer to the medical insurance fund. The second year installment is $1.566 million. Last year, or the current year, was $2.3 million. So that's obviously, we don't have to budget as much for that transfer going forward. Second one is to zero-based budget reduction to legal fees. We're zero-based budgeting down to the school board attorney's contract amount only. As issues come up, you know, and you meet in executive session to discuss litigation, then at that point you can approve any additions, et cetera. 2017-18, lines number 3 and 4. One-time Hurricane Matthew costs. We hope we don't have another hurricane that we have to budget for next year, as well as for the Vero Beach High School flood event that occurred that hit the budget, obviously, this year. Number 5 is reduce reserve for special projects, budget line item. We have a project in our budget that last year we included about $313,000. You may recall that the charter schools, we were working with them to resolve an issue of how they were funded out of the gate. It was primarily due to the state's recalibration of their FTE. So we included about $300,000 in there to try to work with them in terms of getting a recalibrated projection, which is the state is not able to give us a recalibrated projection. So we included that last year. We have actually worked out where they actually give us a recalibrated projection now. So we don't have to budget for that amount for next year.
Carter?
Yes.
Question. Whatever happened to that lawsuit where we were going to, I guess the charter schools were demanding more money from us for?
Suzanne can give you an update on that.
And it was millions, several $1 million, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir. There is a pending motion for summary judgment in front of Judge Canarak, and we are waiting for him to rule on that pending motion. So we're waiting for the court's ruling, sir.
Because that could impact the budget by, how much did they have?
The charter schools never put a dollar amount on it, sir.
Okay, well, just give them $1. Okay, Carter, I'm sorry.
It's okay. There's a spelling correction on the word remaining on number 6 to utilize the categorical flex resolution, which essentially turns state categorical dollars into local funding, and we would direct that at utilizing to pay for the expansion of the iReady to grades 6 through 8. The zero-based budget process for schools totaled about $186,000. That's going to hurt, but the principals did a good job of going through their budgets and trying to justify each line, so their reduction was about $186,000. Reduction in the required payment to the debt service fund for the performance contracting payment. This year was about $1,041,000. Next year is $865,000, so that's a reduction in our appropriations for next year.
Mr. Chair.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Carter, is there any way I could get a list of what we're going to reduce, what the 186 is? Because I know last year, some of the schools took out the accelerated reading, and so I just, as a board member, would like to see what we're cutting out.
Yeah, we were putting together the spreadsheet. Each school went through their discretionary budget, and they have a spreadsheet with all the line items that they're spending money on, and then over to the right, there's a comment section. So we have that notebook, I think, about done, at least for
Yeah,
all the
just about
schools.
finished up. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would imagine, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I would imagine that'll be provided to all of the board members.
Yes, as part of the process, that was something we were going to give to everyone.
Line 9, reduce the roll forward budget for the Naviance 5-year contract. Again, we appropriated and had a purchase order outstanding for that 5-year contract. We're rolling it forward. We will only we can reduce it by $50,000 because that's what's been spent this year.
So we're not doing away with the Naviance program, we just don't need as much next year.
Correct.
Correct. Basically, we budgeted for the entire contract and been paying it down, so to speak, each year. So
Great. So because I know we were planning on giving it, what, 3 to 5 years to
that's a
to gel?
5-year contract, yes, sir.
Okay, great.
The same thing applies to line number 10, the DMG contract, formerly DMC contract, because that's the amount that's been spent in the current year. Line 11 is to eliminate the 2017-18 budget for Marzano training. Dr. Fritz is not here, however, he has indicated that we would try to do some of that
We
training
train that
in-house.
in-house. We don't need to pay for a company to come and do that. We've been doing this for a while. We know what we're doing. We'll just train the administrators in-house.
Item number 12 is to eliminate the Dreambox software. That's now being covered by the iReady program. Line 13 is to reduce our virtual franchise budget. We budgeted, I think, in excess of $50,000, but we don't have as many students coming into the full-time virtual as we would like, so there's an opportunity there to reduce the budget. Number 14, again, we would not like to have to budget for any vandalism costs at our schools. This was something that hit the budget this year. We will zero that out for next year. And the same concept applies to line number 15 for Battelle for Kids, which is your strategic plan amount going forward. Line 16, as part of the charter school lawsuit, board members, we came to a stipulation. We realized that part of the calculation, there was an error. The state did not provide any means of calculating the administrative fee when you have an additional millage being done. So we in essence, had to refund the charter schools about $18,000 this year. We came to a stipulation on that. So we won't it was a one-time cost, and we have distributed those funds to them, so that's not something we need to budget for next year. It was a one-time cost. Number 17 is to eliminate the alternative center in Wabasso as Title I skipped schools. There's a provision in the federal program federal programs that allows you to substitute general fund funds instead of federal funds and skip a school, if you will. Because of the changes in poverty and thresholds, it's my understanding from Title I that we may be able to, they will fall out of the list, if you will, because they're higher poverty schools. Number 18 was Osceola. There was a water intrusion at Osceola, again, part of the flood. We don't have to budget for that. Line 19 is to reduce the budget for the summer bus maintenance. We have a specific program that after the end of the school year, we send our buses to the garage to get the dings out of it, get it nicely spray painted, get it ready for the road next year. They have not been spending the amount of budget that we have put in there, so there's an opportunity to reduce that. Number 20, to reduce the reserve for claims under the insurance deductible. We have about a $25,000 deductible for per incident, and the budget for that, again, thankfully we have not been having a lot of insurance claims that are under the deductible, so we were able to reduce that. Line 21 actually was eliminated in the 2016-17 carry forward budget, but there were still some purchase orders that were still out there for academic achievement grants. So they have been liquidated this year, and the program has been discontinued, so that would not be something we need to budget for. We had a one-time vocational rehabilitation grant that we needed to provide an $8,000 match. That's been eliminated. And the end of course boot camp, line number 23, has also been eliminated based on the low enrollment in that program.
Carter, another question.
Yes.
On the reduction 17-18 reserve for claims under insurance deductible.
Yes.
Is that work comp, or is that just?
That's for property, casualty, that kind of thing.
That comes through scrimp?
Yes. Now this budget, now let me be clear, this budget is for items that are not large enough to go to scrimp. These are like your smaller incidents that don't meet the threshold to file an insurance claim, so we can take care of it in-house.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Going back actually to line number 15. Can you explain, reduce the amount by 19,000? I thought that was a one-time contract for 48,000. So are we saying that we are going to spend another 30 next year?
No, so far in the budget year, we've spent that much. We don't have to budget for that next year.
We still have to pay the rest of the contract.
Yeah, we still have to pay the rest of the contract, but
I see.
at this point, we can say we won't have to budget that much for next year.
We've already spent 30,000 this year, ballpark, right? We've got 19 more that'll be in next year.
Yeah.
But we're not spending any more on.
Correct.
what's
We are
the
not
town?
going over
Already
the
been-
contracted amount.
So just for a little more clarity, you're paying the bill this year and this year and not next? Is that the way you're saying it?
Yeah.
So it's not an increase in a contract, they're just, before the clock
Right.
ticks out, June 30th, we're paying them this year instead of paying our bill next year, if I'm understanding.
That's clarity? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Hopefully this will be some clarity. It seems like these fall into a few categories, these recommendations, whether it's adjustments based on actual unspent amounts, redundant services like the iReady, or one-off type of events that probably aren't best to
Correct.
budget.
I would agree with that, yes.
Yeah, so basically, items 1 through going to be 28 is we were scrubbing the budget. That's
Scrubbing it down.
Carter's usual term. Similar to the zero-based budget process we asked the schools to do, we went through all of our accounts and everything and said, well, we paid this for this year. Do we need this next year? So all these things were things that we either reduced or eliminated.
Great. So far, there's nothing that is a real pain point, it seems like.
No, sir.
Great.
Line 24 is to eliminate the budget for the one-time professional technical salary study. You may recall that one of the superintendent's goals was to establish wages that are competitive with market rates. As you're aware, the confidential managerial, the professional technical, those groups have been done. The only one that's left now is the administrative group. So we've reduced that budget because we've already spent for those already groups. Line 25 is to reduce the interdepartmental vehicle maintenance budget. That was born, a little bit history, out of, actually came from the ESC department years ago. they complained that they had the older vehicles and they had to be sending it to the shop and it had to come out of their budget, and it was unfair to them because they had the older vehicles. And they do a lot of home visits and things of that nature. So we established a central account, if you will, that the transportation department does charge that account for the vehicles, white fleet vehicles that are turned in for repairs to the shop. So we're noticing that the budget was a little bit too high, so we could trim that back by about $6,000.
Have we looked at those vehicles lately? I looked at one the other day, and it bothers me that you're reducing the maintenance on.
It's based on it's based on a 3-year average of the historical costs that are flowing through that account. I think we're just right-sizing it, Mr. Searcy.
We're not eliminating all of it, we're
No,
just
we're just
reducing it.
right-sizing it.
Well, we need to spend a little bit more money on one of those little Toyota, real cheap gas deals. It looks pitiful, pitiful. Okay, Sean.
Line 26 is, we have our online eBay for government of gov deals, if you will. We have to pay some of the fees that the purchasers, previously we had to pay some of the fees that the purchasers, when they go online and they bid. However, that fee is now passed on to them, so we were able to
But
reduce
you should
it.
have been doing that all along. All right? You really should have
For a
been
long
passing.
time.
You have a choice to take the 12%, and we make them pay the 12,
make
or
them
we
pay it
take
now.
5 and they do 7, and I'm glad you caught that, fixed it, and righted it.
27, previous superintendent had established a Schools of Innovation fund, if you will. That was eliminated. However, again, there were some purchase orders still in the system that needed to liquidate. So again, that program is done. So next year we won't have to budget for that. And it was a one-time FASA training fee that we had our principals attend some training last year. And so therefore, that won't have to budget for next year. So the grand total of the superintendent's budget reduction recommendations is about $3.3 million. Impact are about 6.8. So the net deficit, if you will, going into next year, based on the hard costs that we have and the recommendations to offset those costs, are about $3.5 million. There are some TBDs, if you will. Final zero-based budget savings from departments. We do have a couple of departments that have made the case, which actually is increasing their request, and we need to go through those probably as a full cabinet or go through it more thoroughly. Final savings from the curriculum reorganization, which reorganization is spelled incorrectly. If you could correct that for me. Of the ESC services, you will, I believe, hear a presentation on that this afternoon. As you're aware, we had general ed teachers in the classroom teaching ESC, and we had to reorganize the way we do our services to make sure that we were providing a free and appropriate education for those students. And finally, the savings from the superintendent reorganization, again, we're in the process of hiring and placing, but we expect to see a savings on that.
That's expectation so far.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, sir.
That's okay. I'm fluid today.
Majority is ma'am.
I got you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Dr. Rendell and staff for keeping these cuts as far away from the classroom as we can and try to keep those in those 3 categories. And if we could do that, for this other 3 mil, that would be great. I understand that's probably not super likely, but I appreciate the efforts.
I think Mr. Morrison mentioned it, but I don't know if he was clear. As we go through these last few budgets, last few department budgets, there might be actually increases, because, the zero-based budget process might show, well, we don't need this, but now we need this, and this is going to cost more kind of thing. So 1, 2, and 3 there, he keeps saying savings, but we're still not sure. So,
Like, for example, the physical plant, we've got a new physical plant director on, and he is big about preventative maintenance and extending the useful life of our equipment and things of that nature. So there's some requests coming in that line, that sort of thing. So we just have to take a look at a laser-like focus and take a look at that.
But the long-range benefit for us. though.
Absolutely, there's a long-range
Huge
benefit.
benefit.
I just want to say, as Mrs. Justice said, it's so hard, and you do a wonderful job, you and your staff, Carter, because it's not a shell game. It's a, oh my goodness, we don't, all those parts that we don't know. And then we have our preset timeline to come to our public hearing. So really almost hot off the press that night, because she said we don't have a lot, there's a lot of things that aren't put in here, but you keep a good job of putting all the possibilities and keeping it very transparent to the public, not only here, not only on that board, but also on our website. So I want to say that I want to thank you, because you don't have a lot of certainty, and you always do a good job this year as well. And as we progress, you know, I thank you for educating us and keeping, it's a lot of work, and I know this is your busy time of year. And and I know July is really busy after you close the books, I guess. So I do appreciate you and your staff.
Carl, will all of this be on the website?
Yes,
so
sir. I'll put this out there
anybody can
once.
see it,
Yes,
everything
sir.
that we're talking about
We'll put that
today.
out there, yes,
Okay.
sir.
You still got a couple pages to go.
I still have, okay.
Our major budget impactor,
Yes, so,
twice.
this, sorry. This page was essentially to summarize and just make sure that everybody's aware that the year one payment of the deficit and safe harbor amounts has been paid. The transfer has been done to the general fund, as you're aware, of $2.33 million. The budget now contains the year two payment of $1.566 million going forward for next year. I'm not sure, Dr. Rendell, in the interest of time, do you want me to go into the debt and all that stuff?
You got a few minutes.
Okay, all right. Real quick to summarize for you in the interest of time, for you to navigate around the budget book, if you will, because everything is in there. So essentially on the inside cover, page 1 is the ad valorem estimating conference estimate of the taxable assessed valuation as we go forward through the years. Page 2 is a millage rate comparison, which compares the current year's millage rate to next year's millage rate with respect to the 3% Save Your Homes cap and what taxpayers, for the most part, should be seeing on their bills, which is lower taxes. Page 3 shows you a historical, oops, sorry.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Justice.
thank you very much. Mr. Morrison, the last time that the ad valorem estimating conference met and came up with these predictions, this was on August 1st of 2016?
There has been actually one that happened earlier, January of 2017, so that actually needs to be updated a little bit.
Okay, and are these projections the 2016 or the 2017 projections?
These are the 2017 projections.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
The page 3 just shows the split, if you will, between traditional and charter schools, the net annual gain and the overall gain as a district. Page 4 gives a graphical representation of FTE growth over time. Page 5, it's a landscape chart which shows the FTE over time. Again, don't forget that beginning around 10, 11 or so, we started to be recalibrated. Just an item of interest for you when you have some time, ESC level 1, level 2, and level 4 have all increased since 2012-13. However, the overall growth may not have been as large as you're seeing. So the mix of the population is changing, is what I'm saying. Page 6 shows the FEFP calculation based on the conference report with the various categories of categoricals versus state funding versus local funding. Page 7 are what we refer to as the cost factors. The takeaway from there is the level 5 ESC is usually the highest rate because that's the most expensive program in the district. Page 8 is an estimate of revenues for next year. We actually have the actual of 14-15, the actual of 15-16, kind of what we project for the remainder of the current year and what we propose in the 2017-18 line. So for example, if you go down to line 15, other miscellaneous state revenue, you can see that we have zeroed out the best and brightest. Again, we've taken out both sides, the revenues and the expenditures, until this, we get that information from the state. And then from pages 9 to 84, we really have the schools and department budgets laid out with the various staffing allocations versus expected expenditures, basically just for the salary and for other areas that we're able to determine. As I mentioned, salary is going to be a little bit harder. Typically, in the past, we've used averages. However, in the past, if the average is too low, then I have to come back to you and ask for money, and it looks like we're not estimating correctly. If the average is too high, then you get accused that you're hiding money. So we usually, right around July 1st or so, start to go into actual dollars in terms of the averages.
Mr.
Got
Chair?
a few minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
Just kind of reflecting on some of the budget reduction recommendations, it seems like, you know, some of the impactors are unknown for 17, 18, right? There are things that can happen like the Dodgertown situation, like
Yes.
a hurricane, like those things. So again, I just think it kind of reminds me that this budget is a living and breathing document that's going to change.
Yes. Our budgets are not static, they are flexible, in that sense that you don't just set everything in stone. You have categories that you can work within and make, as assumptions change, you can change the numbers.
So to say that you set a budget and then that's your budget
It is a
is an
flexible
unrealistic
budget.
expectation?
Things change during the course of the year as you're operating, as you mentioned. We may get a hurricane, we may have disruptions to revenues that may occur. I mean, we've had in the past, not this year, but, you know, the tax collector's office will say, hey, we have a computer problem, we have a software problem. So now you got to figure out, okay, how do we keep the lights on, so to speak? You've got expenditures for vandalism, for example. The final week at Sebastian River High School, we've had prank week, you know, they glued all the locks shut, so we have to deploy assets and spend money to try to correct those things. So there are things that happen during the year that your budget changes.
Yes, ma'am.
And just because, for the benefit of the flooding at Vera, like you said, but also that's why the amendments, budget amendments come before us at the board. Additionally, there is an emergency provision that the superintendent has where he does not have to come to the board to spend, so that he can take care of an emergency first instead of waiting till a meeting or calling a special meeting. But we'll usually be notified individually of that. Dr. Rendell is good in doing that under his leadership, so.
That's an example of one of those things that might, an emergency item like that.
Well, the flood at Vero Beach High School was a great example. We had to mobilize resources very quickly. We didn't have a board meeting set up or anything like that, you know, so we had to make
Wasn't it like
decisions.
I
It
can't remember,
is.
68,000, 50,000, I don't know how much it was, it could have been less, but
It's in-
I,
It's in the budget,
Yeah,
it was pretty extensive.
it was a lot of money, and that's the emergency
But there is,
provision.
the board policy, there is board policy that allows the superintendent to waive all procurement in the event of an emergency, especially, for example, the hurricane, we need to open school.
Right.
So over the weekend, we were here, we were having people out in the schools trying to get it ready, back to school, and so we exercise that authority.
I believe it has some stipulation along the lines of imminent danger or destruction of property. So it's not just any old reason you
yeah,
can
we'd have
activate
to
an emergency.
pull the policy. to
Policy,
look at
we
the
do
language,
have it
yeah.
there.
I think that's one of the ones that was on the P card, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
because we had to expedite that.
several $100,000.
I believe it was a little over
300,000.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On page 8, line 30,
Page eight,
I'm a bit of a nerd and I look at budgets from around the state. And I notice ours does not have impact fees. And I believe line 30, and I've asked this question about probably 6 or 7 times now, that includes, it's miscellaneous local revenue, and that, I believe, includes impact fees. Is that correct?
It does not.
It does not.
Impact fees are collected in the capital fund.
Okay.
If you notice on the swing, if you will, on line 30 is $897,000. That is the loss of the Osceola money. And so impact fees are tied to growth and adding student stations and capacity. You cannot use impact fees as you would use, like, say, a 1.5 mils. If you used impact fees inappropriately, you would have Mr. Wilson here in front of you challenging us, which he has. because impact fees are very, very restrictive and actually administered by the county, and we report how those funds are spent. So that is not impact fees, Mr. Frost.
So where would we see impact fees? Which line?
On the capital budget. As I mentioned, I think I mentioned in my opening remarks that capital, if I did not, I apologize, but capital is still being worked on, as
Okay.
well as the federal allocations have just been released by the DOE. So capital and federal are not included in the, today's presentation.
But our 5-year capital plan, until we work on it this year, has been set. So that's part of the requirement.
Yeah, you have to submit to the state a balanced 5-year plan, which was approved October of last year, after the final budget hearing.
So we will see in that capital plan revenues and
Yes.
expenses from.
Yeah, we
impact
show
fees.
everything there.
Okay,
It is my intention at the next meeting to go through cover to cover for all the funds. I kind of ran out of time today.
okay. So the reduction is, in this from 1.5 down to 684 is just the Osceola fees?
Yeah, you can see the 897 in the variance column.
When will our next review be?
I think it's June 23rd or 25th. I apologize.
The end
June
of-
25th
Second
sounds
meeting in
right.
Okay.
It's the end of June.
Whatever that date is.
June 27th.
So what else is in there under miscellaneous revenues?
Miscellaneous revenues,
My accountant always asks me that. What do you mean miscellaneous?
typically we get refunds, we get restitution money for when people have judgments against them for the school district. You collect that little money in there, that kind of stuff.
Okay,
Quite a bit of money.
it is.
Yeah,
Half
I
a
was,
million, a little over half
I
a
mean,
million.
$648,000. So
There's-
it's more than one judgment firm.
Well, just using that as an example. but
Sure,
there are several
I would be
things in
curious to, I'd like to,
I
know.
can-
Oh,
there. I had a report for that.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Because that's income. When the public rents out a
That's rent.
school, yes, I know, but does it go directly to the school, or does it come back into the general pool?
That's a good question.
Like, let's say, you know, Pelican
Yeah,
Island to
because
it.
it depends. For example, at Sebastian, they have, they rent the facilities to Calvary Baptist.
Right.
And so those funds primarily reside at the school. However, the cost of the custodian, the cost of the additional lighting, the cost of all the inputs, if you will, into renting that facility, they send us a check to the district so we can run it through the payroll and pay the custodian for the overtime, things of that nature. But most of those funds are retained in the internal accounts, which are audited. That was actually one of the findings of the internal accounts auditors, if you may recall, that there wasn't really any strict policy around that.
So since we rent it out and there's increased wear on those seats, do we set aside any reserves for the replacement of those seats?
So-
Because they need to be replaced.
So that was the issue that the auditors had with the funding at the time, to say that, for exactly that purpose, that the funds were being spent not on students. However, we since have put a policy in place. We met with the principals, shared with them
Oh,
at
right.
the principals meeting, exactly, and the policy reads something in the effect that it has to go back to the facility that generated the revenues, as well as students. I give some credit to Sebastian River High School. They used some of those funds to refurbish all the seats in the back. That's what paid for that.
Okay.
So they won't have to come to us and ask for capital money.
Did you say refurbish those seats?
Well, they fixed them. They had the,
Like put some
You mean they
bolts
were
in or
worse?
something?
Be
Because they-
upholstered.
those are some-
Because they're pretty bad, so is the screen that's
well, it
there.
wouldn't be able to fix all of them, but they did do some work on the seats.
I'm glad to hear that we're now kicking the money back into where it belongs.
Yeah, and
Into where the cost center is, I should say.
Yes.
because I think it should go back to the facility and not the students, and I'll tell you why. If you're wearing the facility, and you keep wearing the facility and wearing the facility, and you rent out the facility, that fund has to be, it's a trade-off. And that would be, I read the auditor's comments, but it shouldn't, I mean, it's not, directly, it is going back to the students, so that when they go to their auditorium presentation, they are sitting on decent chairs that the public, through renting out,
Right.
have worn out. So in a way, it is going back to the students. It just, would be very, I would hate to see money, like that, then be funneled for a program as it wears down, because eventually then the school district's gonna have to pay anyway.
Right, it becomes an ancillary revenue stream for the school
Correct.
that other schools do not have the advantage of.
And that's what the auditors took issue with, that there was no policy around that, and money was being spent on staff, so.
Right, it was staff recognition, as I recall,
Yes,
right?
correct.
Yeah.
So to be
Just-
clear, the school district now has a policy that, through the superintendent's office?
In the internal accounts
in the-
manual.
Okay.
Yeah, to make sure that the funds, where they're generated is where they're put back into, so to speak, to that facility, and not spent on, you know, in
Staff
the past, we had
recognition.
staff recognition and some other things that weren't appropriate.
Just a quick question. So, for example, if Pelican Island's renting the center over at Sebastian River High School, do they have to pay a fee to rent that?
No, we actually provide a little funding for that if that happens, like the PTA or something's gonna, they don't have a facility to hold those large meetings. We do have a line item in the budget. We haven't used it recently, so I don't think it's actually still there, but in the past, we have done that.
So for all these graduations for fifth grade and eighth grade that want to utilize our PAC center, so the schools do not pay a fee to Vero Beach High School to use that? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, not that I'm aware of now.
Not if they're during the day, if they have to do it at night. So for example, some of the schools are using the PAC at night and things like that, we have to cover the cost of the custodians. So we do charge that back to the school that's using the facility.
Okay.
Just transfer rates, though,
Right.
right?
Just, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a,
Because someone's got to pay for those custodians.
It's common and private.
How do you determine the cost of the lights whenever you,
cost of the lights, that's built into the average hourly rate. There's an average hourly rate that we, like a flat fee.
Fee schedule.
That we charge, fee schedule.
just checking? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
That was it. He's done.
Kind of ran out of,
Oh, no questions?
I had
Your turn.
some dead
Ladies.
stuff.
It's not a money question. It goes back to one of the bills, and I want to know if anybody knows, maybe Mr. Frost or something. I'm just curious as far as the impartial hearing officer, or maybe Ms. DeAgresta knows, who determines that, and how far does that take us past, you know, if you're voting on curriculum, or you're you know, and that's the 989, by the way,
Right.
to my peers. I guess that's fine, but, you know, what branch or legislative is local district circuit court, or we don't know, or?
989,
There actually are several pieces of federal legislation that require us to have impartial hearing officers to handle certain complaints that are filed with the district. It would be my hope that we were able to put together a program that allows us to use that kind of a program without having to go out and hire someone, that we could use some of the existing impartial hearing officers we kind of have out there. I'm hoping that the Department of Education doesn't promulgate a regulation which requires us to use the Division of Administrative Hearings or something like that, but I think some of that's still to be solidified, but we're hoping to use some of the local hearing officers that we currently have.
Because we know that that can add
Yes,
an awful
ma'am.
lot of time to that.
And
in,
cost.
yes, and getting, so, thank you. Curious.
Anybody need a break? Oh, we're going to take a break.
Yeah, we need to set up a different PowerPoint, so 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our second presentation of the day, we're going to hear from some members of the curriculum department about the plans for the technical center or technical college that we hope to put in place at the current Alternative Center for Education campus in Gifford. This is something we've talked about a little bit over the course of several different workshops, over the course of several months, maybe even a year, that we've been talking about this. We do have some funds, some adult education funds that we need to spend. We originally had thought about renovating some buildings down at the current TCCAE site, but as we looked at consolidating all of these programs at a center part of the county, the ACE campus actually looked like a better facility for consolidation and the building, so to speak, of a technical center to serve all of our students, both high school students and adult students in our county. So we asked the the Career and Technical Department to look at that and work with the Technical Center for Career and Adult Education. So Dr. Arnett and Mrs. Shields have been working together on these plans, and we think this is something that's going to be really, really good for our community. So we wanted to give you an update on where we are, what we're planning on doing, and get your feedback on that. So, Pam?
Good afternoon, board members and Superintendent Rendell. Back in April, we were lucky enough to have the opportunity to go visit 3 technical schools, one in Port Charlotte and 2 in Polk County, just to get some feedback and sit down and meet with the principals of those locations, just so we could have some baseline data to see where we want to, how we want to proceed in expanding the technical college. Today, Dr. Rendell and Principal Christy Shields will provide an overview of the plans that we have outlined for the technical college.
Dr. Arnett and Christy Shields.
Dr. Arnett. Dr. Arnett.
This presentation, I'm going to give you the background leading up to everything that's happened to this point, so you know that this decision was not made lightly, and so you understand the history behind it. And we started with the forming of a steering committee for the CTE department, so we get some guidance from the general public, some of our stakeholders, primarily employers, owners of companies out there, to determine what the need was with the community as far as technical education. As we set this committee up, what we identified was some areas that we needed to work on. One is improving communication between the community and what's going on currently. What we found in the research was that there was actually a lack of awareness and knowledge in the general community about what we do in the career and technical education. In addition to that, we looked at how could we increase that awareness. We wanted the local community to provide guidance for us as we move forward. And also we wanted to help increase the awareness in our schools about what sort of career opportunities were out there. So that was really the focus of the CTE steering committee. As the steering committee progressed forward, we talked about the different models we use currently. We currently use what's referred to as a comprehensive high school model, in which we have CTE programs at the different high schools, and they're used as electives at the high schools. In addition to the CTE, the comprehensive model, we have an adult tech center, and we'll let Ms. Shields talk a little bit about the adult tech center.
So currently at the Technical Center, we offer career training programs that are primarily focused in the health science career cluster. All of our programs are certificated, accredited by the Council on Occupational Education, and follow the Florida Department of Education curriculum and standards. And job placement is a component of the program because our primary purpose is to train these individuals so that they can go out and become gainfully employed in their particular area of focus. We also provide general education opportunities, classes for general education development and adult basic education. We also offer English speakers of other language courses. And then we are also a Pearson View approved GED testing site. And then finally, we offer lifelong learning opportunities, classes such as foreign languages, QuickBooks, and Excel.
A significant difference between an adult ed program and a high school program is one of the metrics she just mentioned here. Job placement is one of the metrics that she is required to meet. When you look at it from a career technical or comprehensive high school, job placement is not one of our metrics. We strictly are developing some career pathway skills so students can start determining what career pathways they would be following.
Yeah, we are actually judged by 3 outcomes: completion, placement, and licensure in their particular field. And we have to report that data to the Council on Occupational Education every year.
How do you measure your job placement? You don't go out and recruit, go to the hospital and find out if they need those nice ladies that take blood, or?
No, we do, actually.
actually do that?
We have relationships with the Human Resources Department at IRMC, and we do track our students as far as once they become employed.
Another partner we do have when it comes to career and technical education is the college. In Indian River County, they do have a air conditioning, heating, ventilation, air conditioning program, which is located over at the ACE facility currently. The balance of the career and technical education training programs that they have at the college are all done in Fort Pierce, which is an issue which has created some concerns, especially as we start working to train adults for career pathway, as well as working with our high school students and getting them ready for career pathways. And so that's part of one of the issues that came up in our discussions.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm confused. We pay for all students taking a course at Indian River State College.
Correct.
But Indian River State College does not pay to use our facilities.
Correct.
Why is that?
There was there was never an agreement. That was something which took place, from what I have been told, going back at least 10 years prior to our arrival. It was a handshake agreement in which they were given permission to set up a facility at ACE. It's in the only vocational component in ACE. And so they've set it up in there. They've set all the equipment up there. They provide the instructor. And they just used our building, our structure, as for instructional purpose. And if we have a student that takes the course there, then we pay the regular tuition fees there.
Sound like a job for the superintendent. Yes, ma'am.
My understanding, though, that we pay Indian River State College by statute. Is that correct? That if our students go for college courses at the campus, we must pay by statute.
Correct. It's part of the state
The other
statute
part
and the
is-
rules now. There are different agreements with the different universities and trade schools to use school campuses all over the state and the country. For example, when I was in St. Lucie County, for several years, there were agreements with IRSC to use the facilities for some in-kind services. So, they used our facilities for some things. We were able to use their facilities for some things. We just haven't been able to find an agreement, a record of any agreement for this particular location and this particular setup. It will
Don't have an agreement?
It will be different going forward.
Oh, okay, good. Sorry, I mean, I
Just a
think it's
question.
lovely that we allow them to use it, I guess, and it's a great course that I think it serves the community well. It's just,
And this was something
Just
that
we just
came
went
up
through the
this
budget.
year as we were researching
Right.
and going through this. We just came across that.
And I'm sure you'll get into this, but I know that the Indian River State College pays Sebastian, the city of Sebastian, to use their historic old school.
Correct.
And I can appreciate them not paying to a point if they've put in equipment, but I don't know if that should be in perpetuity forever. So that might be something that might be worth a glance. I'm not sure what that situation is.
And one of the things that a byproduct of earlier agreements is a scholarship fund that IRSC does fund for our employees to take courses to earn certifications at IRSC. They continue to do that. We don't contribute to that fund. They take care of that. So there are some
in-kind
yes,
type stuff.
but we don't.
Let's
We
make it
haven't
Need to
feel
have an
better.
agreement.
But we haven't seen anything on paper that covers this.
Okay.
But there will be.
We have a lot of in-kind air conditioning needs, too. But I have a question. Is there any reason we couldn't tie student employment as a metric? I think that's a good metric. If we're graduating folks, they should, we should at least kind of see how they're doing, if they're getting employed or if they're up to, if they're up to the.
It's absolutely a matter of having a tool available to do that or personnel available to do that, to track and that kind of thing.
Not
So
for IRSC's program. That would be IRSC's responsibility to track their program, because those
Right,
are
but
students
I
that are
think-
actually enrolled in their
I think Mr.
PSAP.
Frost is talking about even just our high school students who graduate with a certificate or anything from our high school.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
Because we mentioned the difference between adult ed versus career and
Right.
technical. I would hope that we're also keeping track of career and technical as well.
I think the difference would be a required metric by the state or
Right.
versus a metric that we'd like to use in order to help to, qualify the program.
Right.
Something like an exit interview when they leave, that they have a job.
Yeah, just like that.
That's what, I think a lot of colleges are required to do that now, or something based on their
well,
financial aid
we,
model.
the state actually does track our graduates, and so there's a website, and we can get into that, and we can show you another, yeah,
We could work with Career Source, right?
to show if they've gone to
I
college
do
or
work
not in
with
military.
Career
So on.
Source.
With Career
Yep.
Source.
And if a person is, what we do is we have all of our students register on Employee Florida, and that's a tracking method because they stay within that system for 3 months, and I can contact Career Source, and they can tell me whether or not the person has become employed.
And whether it's in the field in which they're trained?
Yes.
Florida Department of Education actually tracks, do students go to college post, as they finish secondary education, do they go into the military? If they can collect the data as far as do they go into the workforce, they will collect it, but that's not something which, unlike what they're doing with adult ed, it's actually part of the metric that has to be done. For Department of Education, it's not mandatory to find out what every student did upon graduating from high school.
Go ahead, Ms. Short.
We always complain that the state tells us what to do. I think we should do the right thing before the state tells us what to do. I think Christy's doing a great job by tracking and making sure that if a student's taking this course and completing the certification, that they have a job to go into. And I think as we prepare our students for a career or college ready, that's what it means. When our students, high school students, leave and graduate, they should be career or college ready. So if we're not tracking the certifications that we're offering in our high schools, then how do we know we're setting them up for a career? So I do have, that is on my wish list, is that we do a better job by what certifications that we're offering our students, because I just don't want them taking a certification because it's a fun class to have. I want them to take that certification because it's something that we're guiding them into a career that we know that's available to them.
Yes, ma'am.
I hear you and I understand what you're saying, but some people, and that's where the numbers will not show, some people might want to take a 3-year, and an automotive would be a double block as a senior because they don't want to take PE for 4 years, but they are more than college bound. They could be going for to become a doctor, but they want to learn automotive. And so the career and technicals, they do offer, in fact, there is a GPA, funny enough, for automotive. You have to have a higher GPA to take automotive. But so the numbers might be a little, I agree with you, but the numbers might be skewed because many people might take the career course, graduate with a career and technical certificate, but have no intention in going into that at all, but don't want to mark time in high school with PE, 4 years of singing, or whatever. And I do think that that's important because they're learning life skills. They could fix their own car or do something like that. So I think that's great, and the tracking will all be great, but it'll be skewed because the technical schools are not, it's not a mandatory that they go into a program.
But they could be tracked that they are college ready, so.
Correct.
They could be, yeah.
Right.
And we're talking about, what we're discussing today is a career and technical college, correct?
Correct.
And that will probably also have a guidance counselor of some sort.
There'll be staff, that
Yes.
job placement and so
Yes.
on. Yep.
I'm seeing it
Yeah,
work
and
out.
building the same student, right?
glad
No
you
matter
have confidence.
where they're going, it's the same student, because we know so many times students graduate from high school and they think they want to do one thing, and it turns out that's not exactly what they want to do. So again, building those fundamental career, college-ready skills in every student. So I think the goal is,
But it would be good for us. I mean, you involve us, the board, on the beginnings of this thing, and I don't remember ever hearing a report showing how many students you graduated in and what fields they went into and how successful your programs were. So I think that that would be a nice gesture to report back to the board in your final annual report or whatever, of how many students graduated and the different classes and how many are gainfully employed in that field.
Can you do that?
I just think it'd be good for us to know that end of it.
Sure.
Okay.
How many courses do we offer that are like an industry course that don't have a certification attached to it, that they wouldn't be able to go and apply those skills?
I don't know that we offer any at the TCCAE.
Not at my school.
And I don't know that we have any career and technical ed courses at the comprehensive high schools currently that don't lead to an industry certification.
Because with every industry certification, there's money, right?
But we had, and we phased them out.
Yes, we phased out programs that don't lead to an industry certification,
Skills, I mean, there's a skill set that a certification that student is getting.
usually.
It's an important component.
All right,
That
can,
would- student.
Okay, just to give you some background information and knowledge on the technical college or center model, there are currently 30 school districts in the state of Florida who utilize this model. And overall, there are 49 technical colleges or centers. 37 are considered colleges and 12 are considered centers. We are an organized group of individuals. We are a system within the state of Florida. We have a mission statement, a vision, and actually a 5-year strategic plan. The directors and principals of the technical colleges and centers meet on a regular basis. We try and meet 4 times a year to discuss the different changes and challenges that we face as a technical college or center. So with that being said, we also have a website out there. It is called careerinayerflorida.com. If you'd like to go there, you can research what our system is all about. So as a result, I believe Ms. Dampier mentioned this, that the curriculum department visited 2 of those school districts, Charlotte County and Polk, where we visited 3 different colleges and met with their leadership and toured their campuses.
We started off at Charlotte County's Technical Center. The reason we selected that county is because that is a county which is the same size as the school district here, similar populations, demographics, economics. So we would have a general concept of what we were looking at, what a county of this size has developed, recognizing that they have had a system in place for over 50 years, so the facility they have would be a well-established facility.
Is that a picture of their college?
That's a picture of one of their buildings.
One.
As we went through over to the campus, they offer many different programs. This is actually a picture off the Google, and it shows the actual campus. It shows all the different buildings on this campus. The picture you saw originally was that little V-shaped building there in the center, and the rest of them are different classes they have there. Again, they do offer quite a range of different programs there, from architect, arts, AV, digital design, education training, health science, hospitality, human services, information technology, automotive, transportation, and logistics, all on that one campus. From there, we went to Polk County, where we visited 2 other technical colleges in Polk County. It is a bigger county, but it is a rural county that is due west of us. So if you take 60, go out west, you will come to these 2. And at those 2 campuses, this is just a front picture of it. At this school, they have architecture, arts, again, arts and AV, business management courses, health science. These are all the different programs they have in health science. This is the global shot of that campus. The place that we were looking at, let's see if I can make the picture. It's easier for me to go up and point this, that you saw. The entrance, very top there, coming off the road. This is the rest of the campus, so you can have a perspective on the size of that campus. And as you do increase the number of programs you offer at a school, it will obviously have a footprint which will become larger and larger. And then we went to Ridge Technical. Ridge Technical is in Polk County. Again, they have a large selection of programs of studies and many different career pathways. Again, a large footprint which they set up on. Again, these schools have been in existence for about 50-plus years, so they have built over a long period of time to reach this capacity. So what we're looking at is developing a technician preparation, a planned sequence of studies in technical fields beginning as early as 9th grade. These are the career pathways we would be building at the high school level. They could work their way through for up to as many as 2 years in a post-secondary location. And this is what the technical center would be. It would be the post-secondary location. They could do some advanced training. For many of our training, when we talked about the industry certifications, really what we're looking at is some of the entry-level industry certifications. As you go into a post-secondary setting, which you have some of the advanced training. Welding is a good example of this, where you would be at the high school earning welding level 1, welding level 2. When you get to a post-secondary setting, there would be welding level 3, 4, and these are really the marketable skills that the employer is looking for. So it's really the high schools working on a career pathway to get them to a point and transfer them to a technical college where they get the advanced training. Could be a 1 year beyond high school or 2 years beyond high school in some cases to get to the level which they're ready to go into industry. For those who have been around for any period of time, they might recognize the term Tech Prep 2+2. It's when you did 2 years at a high school, 2 years in a post-secondary to develop this kind of skill set.
Mike, one of the things that I didn't notice, and we went through them fairly quickly, was I didn't see anything about police training or fire training. It may have been in there,
There was
but
one with
Actually,
two.
One of the schools.
Law and
have
Public
it.
Safety right there had firefighter.
oh yeah, I see it. Yeah.
You'd have to go to each school to determine what the different programs would be, whether you wanted to get into. And again, you make those decisions based upon what the community need is.
Yeah.
So as you start looking into career programs to develop, the first thing you do is look at the need of the community. And this is what Christy Shields does. We know, well, we're going to talk a little bit about 2 of the programs we definitely want to launch, and it's based on what her research shows is a real need in the community.
And do you also train for CDL? I mean, we're having a hard time getting bus drivers, or we need them on a regular basis. Maybe that's a better way to say it. And do we have a function over there in your department that does CDL training?
Not the
Is
highest.
that something that we could do? I mean, is there
No, we do
certification?
not currently have a CDL training program. One of the challenges with a CDL program is you have to have the trucks to run that CDL program, and they are very expensive to maintain
We have buses, though.
and purchase.
We have buses, don't we?
We do, but you also there are different requirements for CDL. You do have to have trucks to do that.
But in the past, our transportation department has provided CDL training. So through transportation, not through
Yes.
TCCA. Yes, sir.
Somebody else had yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say that the firefighter, when we look at community needs or business, I think there's been a focus on business, but we know, that's such a good point. In the next 5 years, a majority of our firefighters are retiring or up for retirement. So that's something just to keep in mind going forward as the program is built. That was a good point.
But is it a duplication of what's going on down at IRCC and the fire school and police school they have down there? That's
Well, but perhaps we could, in utilizing some type of in giving this option, we'd be getting some of our students interested in going into that field as a career. I mean, is that something, have we focused on? We certainly need to. Here in Indian River County, it's a job you can do that you stay here and work. I'm just saying, it was a good
No, I
point.
know
I was
it.
complimenting you.
That's a discussion thing, and I think it's
Fine.
good. John, did you have something on that?
No, I'm just wondering, are we going to do like a plumbing technician? There we go, okay.
Yep, sorry. Back on
Because
track.
I have friends
Oh, yeah.
in those industries, and they are, I mean, the old joke is the doctor says, you charge how much? And the plumber says, that's why I didn't go to medical school. I mean, that's
Go
a
ahead,
real
Mike.
need in the community, so.
As
Thank
well
you.
as welding, we've got a port right there.
We're going to get to that.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Mike.
The vision is that we would offer at the secondary schools, we would offer an opportunity for students to get the exploratory, begin into these career pathways, transfer then to a post-secondary setting for the advanced training. An example of this, and I use welding because we currently do have a welding program. If you look at the post-secondary and the secondary programs, they actually have identical curriculums. When you actually put these standards side by side, they are word for word identical. So you could start the program at a secondary setting at Sebastian River High School, transfer then to the post-secondary setting, and the vision would be you would finish OCP A and B at a secondary setting and then move on to a post-secondary setting for the advanced training. And at the same time, you could have all those different courses at the post-secondary setting for students who are over at Vero Beach High School that wanted to go through a welding program. They could go to the Adult Ed Center and have it. Because we would be working under a dual enrollment agreement, they would also at the same time have that open to the general public, and so the average, anybody in public could be taking those same courses at the Adult Ed Center. So you could have a true welding program for students from one school which doesn't offer a program, for students to be transferred into schools that do have the program, and for the adult ed general population to go there.
We do have some of these programs in place now, welding and things like that. Well, when those students leave us and go to the community college for that additional training.
Correct.
Do you get any feedback from the college if our students are well prepared to take off for that second 2 years? I mean, do you even check on that, or?
The welding program is a relatively new program. This is the second year in place. So we really have not done that transition as we move forward with this. So I will say that the welding instructor that's over there follows the standards. He uses the NCCR welding certification standards. It's actually every module progresses, and to earn that industry certification, it'll be the same exact model that would be used at a post-secondary institute. So the students not only should come out with the skill set, but also should have the mentality, the thought pattern of an adult going into a career path. It's not going to be like someone who's there as a hobby shop. We are developing these programs to be professional programs.
But it would be interesting to find out if those folks at the community college think that our students are prepared. And again, that's a test back on our teachers to see if we're actually doing the job. Even though we look at the standards, it's what are we turning out? Right. So, Ms. Justice.
Just to be clear, the course title may be different, but the standards are the same.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Mistake for mistake, they're copied.
Whether you're in high school, whether you've graduated and you're going back and you're taking that course, the standards are the same, just a different course title.
Correct.
Okay.
Ms. Orr.
I'm just, you know, for me as a board member, I'm concerned, my concern is what are we offering our high school students now that they can complete before graduation to walk into a career, because not all students will have the means and the ability to go into these additional 2-year programs. My concern is, what are we offering them now so that they can graduate and walk into a career? So are we going to discuss that?
We can. I would kind of prefer that we finish this, and then, because we might cover some of that at the end. Yep.
Go ahead, Mike.
I did the same comparison using building trade technology. Again, it's word for word identical. We were talking about doing a technical, moving the technical center. We use the term technical college. That technical college and technical center can be used the same thing. It's not a college degree you're earning. It's going to be just training. It's just using a different term to describe this identical program. So we're talking about expanding in a couple phases, adding additional parking to an existing facility, And then phase 2 would be to add additional classroom space. At this point, I'm going to turn this process over to Christy Shields, and we do have Nick Westenberg here from the district. He can explain some of the requirements we have. And we have been in contact, we've been working with Mr. Donadio, thank you. And he is a person who developed the 3 schemes that we're going to be looking at.
Schemes?
So they're just very rough drawings of, and he can explain some of the legal requirements, some of the aspects of this.
So,
Schematics is a better term.
as Dr. Arnett mentioned, we envision this happening in 2 phases. Phase 1 would be adding the additional parking and minor renovations. The additional parking is actually a big factor in this. It would be, depending on which schemata the board decides to support, it could be either the addition of 90 additional parking spaces or 130 additional parking spaces. So that's quite a big undertaking, because per SFRA guidelines, you have to have 1 parking space for every 2 college students. Could you go back to that
I'm
real
sorry.
quick? And then also changing the name to college, and we are allowed to use the name college because we are offering post-secondary vocational clock hour programs. And we would be opening on the new site, the Alternative Center for Adult Education, in August of 2018. Phase 2 we see as the construction of the designated trade classroom and labs, and adding the 2 programs that Dr. Arnett spoke about, and providing the dual enrollment opportunities for the secondary students.
Are we doing this just to spend all of that money that we had to spend?
Absolutely not. What this all originates from is when I talked to you about the setting up the steering committee from the community. This is something which they had, after going and looking at the different schools, going to the schools, looking at what currently was available in this district. They've expressed a desire that we need to have opportunities for training locally instead of having to go all the way down to Fort Pierce to get some of these basic training. So no, this had nothing to do with that. This was actually driven by what the steering committee, those leaders in the community said would be something they felt would be contributing to the local economy.
And the site of this new facility is?
It's currently being used as ACE, the Alternative Center for Education.
What are we going to do with that?
That you'd have to ask Dr. Rendell.
Okay.
Correct. So, and let's be clear, not every building that's currently at the Alternative Center for Education site is used for the Alternative Center for Education classrooms and programs. There's at least 1 building, about 2, I think 2 of those buildings that are currently used by the Technical Center for Career and Adult Education during the day and at night. So they're not every building you see there is currently used by the ACE. So it's kind of a shared campus right now. And the idea would be that this new technical college would take over all of those buildings and classrooms. So we would move some of the current programs that are down at the TCCAE campus down by the Flick all to that campus there. So we'd be in one location for all of the different adult education programs. So, but going back to your earlier question, this is totally driven out of what we got from the community over the last 18 months is we need some vocational and technical training here in the district that is not currently available for our students. And the idea to put it in a central location was very attractive to students from the north end of the county. And we have a facility that's partly being used by adult ed already, so to speak. It has an HVAC lab in there. It has a little bit of room to add some more programs, so that's why we kind of went to this area.
But we're not going to do away with the
The Alternative Center for Education will not be eliminated. It'll be relocated. It'll either be relocated maybe to the facility that the TCCA is vacating down by the Freshman Learning Center, or a north site and a south site. That hasn't been determined yet. That's really to open in 2018, so we have plenty of time to make that decision.
Mrs. Susie.
Yes, ma'am.
So to follow up on your question, the funding for this, I think it was the slide before this, though, that the, get my glasses on because she didn't flip it back. The dual enrollment, so the funding for students, as if it was Indian River State College dual enrollment, the school district would pay for the dual enrollment students. But the adult education post, or these dual enrollment that go on to a post, they'll have to pay their own tuition for the following 2 years. And previous year's money, that's, yes, that's what we're looking to reinvest into this.
Capital
But
money.
moving forward, it will be dual enrollment, so there still will be opportunities at the high schools for
Correct.
technical and
Mhm.
career
Yes, correct.
training.
That's not
However, if
changed.
it's this field, or if it's a student that wants to be career ready, that has decided they don't want to be college ready, they want career, and believe me, air conditioning / welding could be much more profitable. They can dual enroll, and the school district will pick up that student's tuition.
Correct.
Okay.
But I
Ms.
just
Justice.
want to make a point, because I think, I don't think you meant, I want to clarify maybe. I think every student will be college ready, right? The goal is that every student is college ready in the sense that they have the skill.
That's not true.
Okay, let me rephrase, maybe I'm not saying what to me, these aren't students that are just going to, I think the fear with vocational centers in the past has been, it's become this, that it was this dumping ground, this idea that students that really weren't doing well in some of their other classes would go and you would put, and that's not the goal of this. The students will take courses at their high school, they will continue with their studies there, and their studies will be enhanced by.
They will have to apply for dual enrollment, and they will have to meet certain GPA requirements in order to come to the technical college and pursue dual enrollment opportunities, just like they do with IRSC.
Okay.
So we're not lowering our standards.
Correct.
Ms. Justice, I wasn't totally disagreeing with you, but I don't think that our goal is to have every student college ready when they come out of it. I mean, we
The
want them to be
phrase
able to
that we
read,
usually
number
say
one.
is career and college ready.
Career
So
and
these
college.
kids would
And
be
that-
ready for a career.
I didn't mean to dispute what you were
No,
saying.
it's fine, I just think maybe I'm just thinking, when I think about college ready, I think about a student that is able now to go on their own, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
building that same student with the same skills and, you know, not devaluing saying, oh, you're college ready, you're career ready, but just that you are a student ready for life. I think is my.
And unfortunately, we saw this weekend, there were many students that had certificates of completion that could not go to college. They'll either have to get a GED or go to Smart Horizons, or hopefully, if they keep, because of that, which I'm glad to see that the legislative body is looking at the 10th grade ELA, because we find so many of our students not able to have a high school diploma because of the 10th grade ELA test. And so, in a way, I know for me, I'm not saying that we're lowering the standards, but for me, the technical college, if we're keeping that standards for dual enrollment for college, for technical, I got a problem with that. For me, I feel that this should be an open opportunity for some of those students that are not book ready. I feel, but that's just a personal opinion. Do you know what I'm saying? You have students that they just cannot pass that ELA, and they just can't go to college. And we're talking about, and I don't want to say firefighters or something like that, but some of these that they want to go down a path, and whether through it's they just can't pass a test. They're exceptional students. They're there. They put 100% in, but they just can't pass these tests that we talk about, these high stake testings. And they want to be a welder, but we've raised the bar. Now they can't go to our technical college. So, you know, I get some mixed feelings about that.
The standard for going to the dual enrollment at the college would be a 3.0 GPA. If you're going to go to do the technical, whether it's with the college or with the adult center, it's actually a 2.0. We want all students to graduate from high school. That's for the 2.0
Can you
GPA.
repeat that? I'm sorry. What did you say about the 2.0?
The requirement for going to technical trade programs, whether it's with IRSC or whether it's with the adult ed program, the requirement for that is a 2.0 GPA. And essentially what we want to make sure is all students will graduate from high school. Since the requirement is a 2.0, we want to make sure that is maintained at all times. And so if for whatever reason they need to work on their academics, we want them to focus on that to get to the 2.0. But once they're at that, and if they want to start working on developing a marketable skill to move on into an industry upon at some point in the near future, they can do that. Most important is, but our goal is to make sure they're ready to be lifelong learners, so that as they move along in their careers, we understand that they're going into entry-level positions. They will then proceed further along, and at some point in the future, they may find some sort of post-secondary education to their advantage. I use myself as an example that I'm an automotive mechanic. In my background, I turned wrenches for many years. I've done truck driving. Then you begin working on anything.
We got it.
Ms. Zork, you had one question?
No,
Can I just say one other thing real quick, just in regards to the certificate of completion, those particular students? The majority of the programs that are offered PSAV through a technical college do not require a high school diploma. There are certain TABE testing requirements. They have to meet those guidelines in order to receive the certificate, but the majority of them do not require a high school diploma.
Oh, that's great. Okay, then that makes me
Okay,
feel more.
so I think we need to
Right.
move on to
Yeah.
Two yes/no questions.
Okay, to Mike.
Thank you. So will some of the instructors be adjunct professors at IRC, or adjunct instructors, I guess they would be in the technical fields?
Yes,
Okay.
I have
And-
those now.
Okay, and will we provide transportation to students to get to this? Thank you.
Mike, take it away.
So this is the current footprint of the existing site as it is today. This is the first schemata that we wanted to present. This one shows the addition of 90 parking spaces you will see in the front. The bus loop has been redesigned. And along the north side, there have been additional parking spaces added, and then to the south, there have been additional parking spaces added. And then it also shows the addition of the industrial trade building in purple.
I don't see dollar amounts.
It's actually, we're not asking for approval of any projects today or anything like that. We're showing you the ideas.
But wouldn't it be nice for us to know, if we're looking at schematics, if there was $1.7 million that we have to
If you look at-
use to know which, which
guess
one
more
to be
parking
guided
spaces is
toward?
If you look at the schematic, the price is actually on there.
Oh, is it? Sorry,
Yes.
I can't.
It's in the small print in the,
It's really small.
It's too small.
I do
It's not the-
Yeah, I thought it was just me.
No, yeah, it's like,
Can we
a
get that
spec.
in? We'll resend it.
Thank you.
we'll actually get you a copy of the original schematics.
No, I'm gonna need, yeah,
Okay, and then the next one you see here is the addition of 140 parking spaces, along with the industrial trade building and another building of classrooms, both in the purple.
Any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Go ahead, Mike.
So that is how we vision expanding and developing the technical center in the new location. If you have any questions, this would be time to ask them.
We can't read the numbers there, but if you could go back to scheme 1, scheme 2, and scheme 3, and just tell us the overall dollar figures so we have an idea. And it's right there. but-
Mr. Donadio is here, and he can share with us what the numbers say.
On scheme one, again, these are concepts.
You'll have to come up and use the microphone.
Yes.
Yep.
My name is Tony Donati. Oh, go ahead,
Just a
I'm
minute,
sorry.
Tony.
Nope, that's fine.
Go ahead, Ms. Justice.
No, that's fine. I'm fine. I'm
It's
sorry. I just
Tony
wanted him to
Donadio,
introduce-
the architect, right?
Right, yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Tony Donati with Donati Associates Architects. We were asked to look at the existing alternative ed campus and come up with some schemes that would meet the requirements that Christy, Mrs. Shield gave to us. Scheme one roughly is about $1.7 to $2 million. That's for the addition of the parking, the enlargement of the stormwater. That's for some minor renovations in the existing two-story classroom buildings, and then the addition of the vocational building, which is a classroom with 2 labs for welding and I think electric, is that correct?
Construction trades technology.
And that's basically what scheme one was and how again, conceptual costs were derived. So, and we do have a range because it is a concept, and depending on when this goes to construction and if it goes to construction, prices change, different things come about. Scheme 2, again, we added another roughly 90 spaces. In addition to the previous vocational and renovations to the classroom buildings, there was another classroom pod added, a 2-story pod, which is basically 2 classrooms and 2 labs. And the estimated cost on that was, I think, let's see, about $2.275 million to $300 million, or excuse me, $3 million. And also, I failed to mention that in the existing administration building, which is the cafeteria, there is a scheme to create a multi-purpose center there where they can seat like 48 people to do workshops.
Right, an auditorium-type facility.
That's included within that.
Ms. Orr.
Mr. Searcy, I would ask that we be provided the, if we're looking at 1.7 to, or 1.2 to whatever million in Scheme 1, what does that include, and another list of what's included in the list of renovations in Scheme 2 as we move forward? And I have a second question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Donadio, is it, I had asked our finance department for a rough estimate of how much these drawings were going to cost us.
That includes FF&E costs and A&E fees into that total amount.
So it's included in
Yes,
this?
excuse me, I should have stated, this is a total project budget, not a construction budget. This is the total project complete. Building, FF&E, furniture, fixture, and equipment, and A&E fees.
So if we choose you to do the project, your cost is built into this?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay.
And again, those are just, it's conceptual. We would, once we determine the final scope, we would negotiate with the district.
If we don't choose him as the architect, will we be billed for that, a certain amount?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
If we don't utilize your services, how much would these renderings cost the district?
We have a work order right now for these services.
Is that doesn't answer your question, though, does it?
No, because,
We owe him for what he's done so far.
and I was told that there wasn't a cost. So I'm just trying to figure out where the miscommunications is on this.
We need to
Yeah,
provide
I'll
this.
research that and get back to you
Thank
on,
you.
what.
I'm sorry, Mrs.
Yeah,
Orr, can you say again the first part of your comments? I missed,
Well,
I missed part of it.
As
Not a
a
reader.
board member, we need to know how much, as we go along in the project, how much is it costing in our process? And I had asked finance for an update, and I was given the information that there has not been any cost associated to this.
Before
So-
before that part, you said another thing, as you gave some direction or something, I was trying, and I didn't catch that. No, okay, thank you, sir.
If I heard
Just
right,
a
it was
better
just,
view of these micro,
Oh, I'm
Prints, sure.
sorry. A list of what's the differences in the cost?
yeah, and what
Um,
each scheme includes.
Okay, thank
But
you.
that's
Yeah,
in
This
there.
Right,
list
fine
of
to make sure.
renovations for Scheme 1 and the list of renovations for Scheme 2. So what are the differences are we looking at?
I have
That's what
one more
I'm
question.
asking for.
Ms. Dale was first.
Thank
It's
you.
in here, but.
yes, I would agree with her. I'd like to know what is the difference in parking spaces, and you said something about the retention pond, and if you use impervious surface, like there could be a 1, 2, or 3, if you used impervious surface, would you not have to, expand the retention pond? So could there be a 1, 2, and 3 with different, that's all. I don't want to add a third plan, but if you have 1.7 and a 2.2, and there might be, it just depends, because impervious for overflow, I'm not sure if that's it, but
There's
if
a
you use it.
trade-off, though. Impervious costs more than regular asphalt, and you'd have to look at the evaluation of whether it's cheaper to build, enlarge retention, or go impervious, which is, you have to maintain over the years.
But do you have room for building a retention pond would take, and where is it on that map? That's all. I know you're
Right.
going to get
The
us.
green area is the expansion of the retention. We tried to keep it to the west so it doesn't impact the ball field
Okay.
and all the fields to the
Thank you.
east.
Ms. Justice?
Yes, sir. So in scheme one, it's 90 parking spaces, and then in two, is it that the 140? Is that correct?
130.
130,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's some information here, and it is small to read, but there is a breakdown of the classrooms and the number of students and the number of parking, but the basic difference between Scheme 1 and Scheme 2 is Scheme 1 is 172 cars, and you have the existing classroom renovations plus the vocational building, which is about 4,000 square feet. Scheme 2, you have 212 cars, and we're adding the two-story classroom building. We can provide the conceptual cost breakdowns.
Tony, is that those, the blue and the green up there and the purple or whatever that is, that's existing buildings?
The blue is existing, the purple is proposed buildings, and the green is
And we're
retention.
planning on remodeling some of the blue buildings?
Yes.
Isn't
yes,
that
sir.
about a 100-year-old school or something like that?
No, that's a fairly new school, sir.
Was that, oh, the new piece?
The whole thing,
It's not
This
part
is
of Gifford Middle 6 or
Gifford,
7.
Gifford Middle. It's not part
No,
of
sir.
Gifford Middle,
No,
okay.
sir.
I just want to make sure we weren't going back in and rebuilding those ancient schools.
Now, are we thinking about the cost of any possible remodels for the alternative education center if we move it? I mean,
We haven't decided where we're going to put, the ACE program. If we put it at the current TCCA site, I'm not sure there's much renovations needed there at all. There are currently just 7 classrooms down there, or,
We have 6 concretables and then 3 classrooms.
yeah, so.
And the
I'm not sure.
gymnasium, or the old gymnasium, that's part of it?
That is where the 3 classrooms are with
Okay.
3 offices in the front.
Okay. Any more questions? Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been nice to know what that fund, because I can't go from memory, that was in the career and technical, adult career and technical, because if we're looking, we're throwing out 1.7 and we're throwing out 2.2, what was that fund? I know it was high enough to.
1.2, as I recall.
1.7, I thought.
It's about 1.7.
So
So,
we
a
can
couple
only
things.
afford scheme one.
Yeah, a couple things. Number one, we weren't asking for your approval really on either Scheme 1 or Scheme 2 today. Schema, schemata, Scheme 1 or Scheme 2.
Plan,
It was to show you where we were in this process of planning everything. The things that they've identified by visiting other schools and how they can do a program, a joint program, for our high school students and our adults in our community on the same campus and that kind of thing. Scheme 1 and Scheme 2 are ideas at this point, rough cost estimates and that kind of thing. There is the adult education workforce money, that can be used for this, but keep in mind, we also have the discretionary property tax millage that the voters approved back in August, and part of the funds for that was vocational training. It was teachers, technology, and training, so vocational training, not only to support the current programs at the 2 comprehensive high schools, but also for adult education and other vocational training programs. So, these improvements to this site and these additional costs for these buildings and renovations could all be funded by the discretionary property tax millage, and that is something that the community supported and based on, what we have found to be a community need, is preparing, people in our community for these jobs that, as Mr. Frost mentioned, he knows people that say they can't find skilled tradesmen in these crafts. So the purpose today was to share with you how we've come along so far in this project, and we'll be bringing you more information, more detailed information, that kind of thing.
Ms. Justice?
I just wanted to ask, I'm so impressed with the Charlotte County, the technical colleges they had, and I just wanted to kind of ask if they're a similar school district, how are they so far ahead? How long ago did they recognize the need, and what was your takeaway from it, just to kind of close out?
They have been in existence longer than we have as far as offering career and technical programs. Adult education originally started in this county in 1970. And we did not start offering career and technical programs until, I believe, 2005. So we are a little behind the curve as far as that goes. It is a very impressive facility, and as Dr. Arnett mentioned, there are a lot of similarities, and we could certainly mirror those and offer some more of those programs in this area. I meet with CareerSource on a regular basis. I recently just met with the president and the vice president, and they are very excited about us doing this in this county, because they definitely see a need for it. And they send us students on a regular basis.
Great. Love the concept. Thank you for your good work.
We're going to need to move on, Laura. One last question. We got another presentation.
No, I just, maybe in the next presentation is to really show us how, if we're collecting the millage for career and tech, that it's actually going toward our high school students. I don't think the taxpayers were thinking that it was going to go more toward the adult education part of it. I think they were under the assumption that it was going into our high school students. So I would like to see more where we plan on putting that money into our high school students.
Mike, the concept was really good, like has been said here. Just get the numbers together and let's go for it. Anything else, Ms. Dampier?
So as we transition to the ESE presentation, while they're moving that, changing the slides, changing seats and all that kind of thing, Mrs. Ork did ask, so if you guys can start, what types of programs do we currently have at our high schools that lead to industry certification? So Dr. Arnett can't go very far away. But we have plenty of programs already in place that lead to industry certification, that lead directly to work. For example, just last week, we had the pinning ceremony of all of the CNA graduates at Vero Beach High School. So over 50 students graduated with their clinical nursing assistant license ready to go straight to work, if that's what they want to do. We have the same program up at Sebastian River High School, so we have medical skills at both schools that lead directly to work, medical skills training programs that lead directly to work. The automotive technology programs at both schools turn out kids ready to go to work. We have internships with some of our dealerships here on US 1. And some of those kids did internships this summer and are going to work directly for those dealerships right away. We have, Dr. Arnett, don't go too far away. Some other programs that, like for example, the business skills program at Vero Beach High School, kids, who graduate from there in that program have QuickBooks certifications and some other certifications. They can go right to work. I had an inquiry earlier this week from a local CPA firm that wanted somebody with the type of skills that a Vero Beach High School graduate from that program would have. So we have plenty of, we have welding already at Sebastian River High School, construction trades down at Vero Beach High School. So we have a lot of programs already in place. I know I didn't catch them all, but we can make sure that we give you a list of everything that currently is available at our high schools that will lead directly to employment.
My thoughts on that whole deal, Mr. Superintendent, is that I'm kind of leaning towards the, instead of having the college name there, something besides college. I know we can do the college, but this is for our students, and it just seems to me like it would be better if we didn't use the word college. But
the only thing I would say, sir, can I speak to that for a second?
Sure.
Okay, so the only thing that I would say is I see it of great value to have the adult education component, because so many of our students have parents that are struggling to make ends meet. And we know that. And if we're able to somehow play a part in offering additional adult courses on our campus, whether that's through a partnership with ISC or our technical college, we can work to help to enhance the lives of our students in lots of different ways.
yes, ma'am.
And just to say that this money is not generated from students that we're using. We have career and technical in the schools. I'd love them to dual enroll at the adult education, but this is not for the students. This is for, and again, I didn't get a chance to ask, but between 18 and 22, for some students like in Wabasa that cannot move on, we had used some of that money, and I'm not sure if that 1.7 was minusing the, weren't we doing the baking class?
Over here.
It hasn't been, none of those funds have been used for that.
So some money is going to come out of that.
Yes.
And then, as I said, which I think, I'm not sure who said it, but I understand what they're saying, but this money is for adult education that we, as I said, so I would
Correct.
love that we could have the dual enrollment.
We can show
part
you
of
the
it,
budget
that our
breakdown.
students would benefit. I agree with you, but you have to, it's more like 3/4 are for the adult, and I'd love to slip our students in on that process, but.
Well, we'll be able to show you the budget breakdown about where the funding streams are coming from and what they're paying for.
Let's go ahead with the next.
Yep, and these are actually larger slides of what you have in the
can
black
actually
folder.
see them?
Yep. All right, so As mentioned earlier today, we've had this continuing work with the District Management Council, which is now called the District Management Group, on making sure that we're providing the best services we can to our students with disabilities, the ESE students, as they're often referred to as. So we asked the curriculum department, specifically student services and ESE, to come and give us an update on how we are doing with our work with DMG and changes that we have made for this year, for next year in this process. So I'm going to get a little bit of a recap on where we've been with GMG and everything, and then where we are, what we've learned so far and where we're going in the future. So, Ms. Dampier.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Rendell. We're so pleased to have our partnership with DMG. Today, they're going to provide us an overview of the work that they've done thus far. This also will support the work at the last board meeting. We had asked for approval of a behavior intervention specialist. This was some of the data that we used to explain why there was a need for that position. So without further ado, we have the Director of Exceptional Student Education, Heather Clark. We have Kristen King from DMG, as well as Dr. Martinez, Executive Director of Student Services and ESE.
Before we begin, I just want to make one statement. If we can, let's let them do their whole presentation before we ask any questions, because they've got 30 minutes exactly to get it over. So take it away. Thank you, by the way.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for your time. My name is Kristen Keene, and I'm a Senior Associate at District Management Group. And we're going to do a kind of a shared effort here in our presentation today. I'm going to provide you all with a recap of the work that we started off with in Indian River, since I believe it's been a little bit since we've met, and then go into some more detailed information on what's been accomplished and what is still remaining to be done. So as a reminder, up on the screen above, you can see is a project overview of the 3-year plan of partnership with Indian River. There are 4 main phases, and I'm going to walk through each of those phases in detail with you all. The first phase, which we started in the spring of 2016, was the diagnostic phase, where District Management Group, in collaboration with Indian River's leadership team, gathered a lot of data around current practices for supports and services for struggling students. And struggling students, by that we mean both students with and without disabilities. We gathered that through a number of means, through focus groups and interviews with teachers, principals, administrators in the central office, parents as well. We also collected schedules from staff members who are working with struggling students, so we could see in great detail how are they using their time, and get some insight into the responsibilities that are on their plate. We also coupled that with best practice research that DMG has collected throughout the years, as well as experience that we bring to the table from what's working in other school districts around the country, and then shared a high-level summary of some opportunities that we believed would be the best to start with in Indian River in improving and building upon the practices that are currently in place. As well, in that phase, we assembled an advisory group, which we call the Guiding Coalition, and that is a group made up of principals as well as central office leaders to go through that information, to prioritize and start developing action plans, which we'll go through in a minute. And from that diagnostic, as you remember, 4 key preliminary opportunities were identified. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because from this list you'll find that we narrowed our focus down to 2. All good things come in shorter lists, I find. So the first, just as a quick recap, was developing the capacity of gen ed teachers to ensure all students receive academic support from a content-strong teacher. The second opportunity was around clearly defining the models of ESE support to create a continuum of services and more precisely allocate staff in support of those models. The third focused on realigning existing staff and systems for emotional and behavioral supports around a coherent district plan for helping teachers promote engagement and positive behaviors. And the fourth opportunity was consider increasing the amount of time speech and language pathologists spend with students and set a more precise entrance and exit criteria for those services. And in the second phase of our work with the Guiding Coalition, we shared out these observations. We went through the data with the group to create an alignment on what are those opportunities and what does it mean for Indian River. We then, as a group, thought about what of those opportunities will have the greatest impact on students and staff, and also which would be the most feasible to begin our work on. And also defined a vision for success. So what do we intend as our outcome if we are to focus on implementing those opportunities? And then what strategies in a more narrowed focus would be our work specifically in Indian River. And the Guiding Coalition identified the first two as the initial priorities for our work. So focusing on increasing the capacity of the general education teachers and also clearly defining the models of ESC support. And the overarching vision is shown here. We asked the Guiding Coalition to articulate what is the final outcome or the desired future state you want to see from this work, and then what is it going to mean for students if it's implemented to its full extent, and what will it mean for staff. For the first opportunity, the Guiding Coalition defined that the desired future state would be that all gen ed teachers would be equipped with the training and resources they need to meet the needs of all students, including each school implementing the multi-tiered systems of support framework with Fidelity, teachers being able to utilize the district-provided ELA and math guidelines with Fidelity, and teachers will use universal design for learning strategies to help differentiate their instruction to meet the needs of all the learners in their classroom. For students specifically, the coalition members defined the impact as having students receiving high-quality core instruction to prepare them for success in college, career, and becoming a citizen of the community. And for staff, teachers are going to be better supported to help them improve their instructional practices in general, but also help differentiate their instruction to the various needs of students in their class. And for the second opportunity, the desired future state was identified as student goals will address the barriers to the standards and will be based on individual, regular scheduled data sources, clearly documented on the IEP. Service delivery guidelines are clearly defined to ensure a common language and understanding of those models. And service delivery guidelines are established to use to assist staff in ensuring a continuum of services is provided. Essentially, that the IEP guidelines, or IEPs, are created in relation to the student needs, and that if you are a student at school A and you move to school B, the services that you're receiving won't be dramatically different. For students specifically, it was defined that students will receive appropriate services based upon their individual needs, access intensive interventions to help address any deficits that they have, access clearly defined student-friendly systems, have increased ownership of their own learning. Student achievement also will improve as evidenced through individual student progress monitoring. And then for staff, having a clear understanding of their role and responsibilities, increasing equity from building to building in allocation and staff support, collaborative planning between ESC teachers and general education teachers will be in place, and students in the lowest quartile, for teachers supporting those students, they will have access to intensive interventions to meet those student needs. The coalition also further narrowed the scope of our work into some key support strategies underneath each opportunity. For the first opportunity, there was 3 support strategies, the first being ensure that the district and school-based leaders have a common understanding and language around supporting struggling students. The second, providing some guidelines and guarantees for all students on math and reading instruction and support. And then the last, provide training and real-time feedback to teachers on applying differentiated instructional strategies. For the second opportunity, 3 as well strategies were identified. First being ensuring that IEP goals are written based on student needs. Second, developing a common understanding and consistent implementation of guidelines for service delivery models across schools. And then lastly, providing training and support to district and school-based leaders to effectively provide feedback on ESC instructional pedagogical practices. Currently, what we are focused on is developing a monitoring plan, which is underway, and that is what I'll be handing over to Lillian and to Heather to walk you through what has been accomplished in that preliminary monitoring plan and what we are shooting to accomplish over the summer and the beginning of the next school year. So for the first opportunity, I'm going to hand over to Lillian to talk through that.
So ensuring school district and school-based leaders have a common understanding and language around supporting struggling students. These are some of the steps that were taken into consideration, starting all the way from training for the MTSS and having school-based leaders complete activities that provided input and actually identify the barriers and the issues that schools were having in actually implementing the MTSS. As most of you do know, we also made sure that we assigned our program specialists this year to schools, which were utilized to look at those barriers and clarify the concerns, provide the support, overseeing the barriers and making sure that schools started developing that common language around the MTSS or multi-tier system support process. Our prevention specialist has also worked closely with our teams to make sure that where there's gaps in the process, there is enough support. Additionally, district leadership staff has visited schools to work around these areas in particular. We created a manual this year, MTSS manual, so that there is a hard copy of a resource that we project to update on regular basis every year as we do the work and continue to enhance our practices. With the self-assessment tool, we continue to utilize that tool and we'll continue to gather the data and collect that data to be able to assess our tier supports and what the schools need and where do they need the supports and the professional development. If you look at the top box, in April, 100% of the MTSS teams participated in central office tiered exercises. So we had not only our school principals, but we had select MTSS team members come to the district and they actually provided all the input after the principals were trained on the MTSS data platform. So, and there's different types of data platform. We have some pieces that are in focus that are used to track overall. And then on the next slide, I'm going to share with you a project that we are just starting. So the next piece would be the timeline for administering training to all schools are developed. So we will be working on that and making sure that we have a solidified action plan and how we are going to carry this out depending on the needs and where we're at. As we continue to use the self-assessment, it will be ongoing all the time to continue to see where we're growing and where we'll continue to see gaps. So we expect to have all the trainings administered by October. We will be starting this summer. We'll resend the self-assessment tools to continue monitoring the progress. And then 100% of students identified as Tier 2 or Tier 3 supports will be tracked through a data tracker. So we recently brought Unified, which is a platform that we already have, and we haven't maximized the use of it to be able to track, and that's where we brought in select people from the MTSS teams so that they could literally input all the different types of interventions that we are currently utilizing in our schools so that we could have a stronger common language and they could track the intervention, the rates, the progress monitoring, all through one system that's part of our Performance Matter and Unified. And then we will continue to train and help our principals and our APs through administering these self-assessment tools so that they could continue to self-monitor while we are using that data to continue to enhance our practices and develop our professional development pieces. And now,
so
Heather.
you will notice, you'll notice the next support strategy really centers around our collaboration with curriculum and instruction. As Kristen stated, we have curriculum and instruction members that serve on our team along with principals on our guiding coalition. So the next piece is focused around providing district-defined guidelines and guarantees for all students in math and reading and instruction and support. One of the things that curriculum instruction has really focused on is developing math and literacy routines and providing that training in a systematic approach this school year. So you'll see February 2017 standard practices and routines for math and ELA instruction were defined by the district through those routines. In April, a written document of common practices and routines for math and ELA instruction were developed at the district level. We are conducting a standards institute training. Actually, next week, the 30th, it's a 9-day training. Our teacher leaders will be attending along with literacy and math leaders. This is a train-the-trainer session developed around unit assessments, lesson planning. They will take this back to their schools and they will train individuals at the school sites. So when we're looking forward to this support strategy and what's upcoming, you will notice that the training is outlined and the timelines in terms of 100% of the outcome would be 100% of the staff receive the training for literacy and math by December 2017. We anticipate that that's going to occur before that date. So the next piece you will see support strategy C. This really focuses on providing training and real-time feedback to teachers on applying differentiated instructional strategies that meet the needs of all learners. This is focused on universal design for learning. You'll notice February 2017 training provided for 100% of school-based administrators. This was an overview of universal design for learning with the intent that that is going to be incorporated within our training that is going to occur on the 30th. Universal design for learning is embedded as the first portion of that training and really focuses on an approach for all learners, looking at the design of the classroom, the design of assessments, considering the needs of all learners. And that is the timeline that you'll see here. This was developed in collaboration with our ESE staff, Florida Diagnostic Learning Systems, also developed the training in collaboration with our staff. The next piece you will see the providing training and real-time feedback to teachers and applying those differentiated instructional strategies. An action plan has been finalized for the trainings, and this just, again, highlights that 100% of the trainings will be provided relative to universal design for learning and differentiation. So you will notice here on our next models of support, which is our next strategy, clearly defining models of ESE support to create a continuum of services and more precisely allocating staff to support these models. We've done a tremendous amount of work around this particular benchmark as well, looking at the allocation of staff to support all students. As Carter mentioned previously in the budget meeting, really taking a deep look at and teasing out, specifically at our secondary level, we had some ESC teachers that were teaching general education. So we really had to take a strong look at looking teacher by teacher, what are they teaching, and ensuring that their time is spent with ESC students to provide a free and appropriate education. So this has been a piece of our work. You will see here that the 3 benchmarks, ensuring that IEP goals are written based on student needs, being one of those, developing a common understanding and consistent implementation of guidelines for service delivery models, and providing training and support to district and school-based leaders to effectively provide feedback to our ESC instructional support, as well as our general education teachers. So the next piece, ensuring that IEP goals are written based on student needs. We have provided quality IEP training for all of our district ESD resource specialists and program specialists. They received that training in February with the goal of taking that back to the staff to provide that training at the school sites. District psychologists, program specialists, student support specialists, all of our student services, we saw a need to update our procedures district-wide. We noticed that our procedural manual had not been updated in 5 years, and a lot has changed in that time. So we took that task on at the beginning of the year, and we provided a comprehensive training for our entire staff. This is a working and living document that is updated as procedures and statutes and so forth change. So that is available on our website for access as well. The next piece you will notice, clearly defining guidelines for available and appropriate data sources. Lillian mentioned the data sources and our work with Performance Matters and Unify to ensure that we are all looking at those common data sources and we are making decisions based on data. Identifying staff, working with targeted groups of students to analyze data and plan for programming accordingly. This has been a focus of our ESC student services staff to take a look at each individual student to ensure that students are getting what they are required to receive. All of our schools, all of our secondary schools have completed inclusive scheduling in collaboration with Florida Diagnostic Learning and Resources System. That has been a very positive experience, and through that we have utilized the inclusive scheduling along with the DMG formula to take a look at our allocations, and one of the outcomes of that was supporting the ESC programming at the district, or at the school sites by having our a resource specialist allocated to each school, as well as a behavior intervention specialist. We have also piloted learning walks through the development of a learning walk tool that has been piloted at some of our school sites. The next piece, ensuring that IEP goals are written based on student needs. Again, we have a timeline for this outlined. District staff will continue to provide ongoing instruction and support to school-based teams in progress monitoring and data collection. So this is our work upcoming to ensure that we are meeting the benchmarks and we're supporting teachers and students. The next benchmark, developing a common understanding and consistent implementation of guidelines for service delivery models. District staff will review support staff schedules at secondary schools to ensure that the service delivery guidelines are employed with fidelity. Again, this goes back to our prior conversation about ensuring that our teachers are teaching our ESC students, so we will be reviewing that on a regular basis. Highlighting here the role of the student support specialist has been repurposed to behavior intervention support specialists to be dedicated to providing student behavior interventions and support to teachers, looking at that 75 to 80% student contact time, which is best practice. One ESC resource specialist allocated to each school for 17-18 to provide additional ESC expertise at each school site, again, with a focus not just on compliance, but providing that instructional support and guidance for ESC teachers as well as general education teachers with the implementation of the individualized education plan. Some of our upcoming pieces, you will notice professional development will be provided for key stakeholders in the Learning Walk tool. We are in the process of designing the professional development schedule. That will be shared in our summit on June the 7th, our proposed schedule for our administrators to view and provide us with feedback, and then we will roll that out to teachers. District staff will clearly define guidelines for service delivery models. Again, that is in alignment with our procedural manual, and that's something that is included. ESC district staff in collaboration with school-based leadership will review Learning Walk tool and make necessary revisions. That is an ongoing project. Okay. The next piece you'll see, providing training and support to district and school-based leaders to effectively evaluate ESC instructional and pedagogical practices. District and school staff are conducting regular learning walks based on teacher input as ongoing training in the use of the feedback form. Again, these are at our pilot schools, and our goal is, as we are approaching the next school year, that will be throughout the district. The feedback form from the learning walks will be shared and are shared with our stakeholders, being our teachers. And we are also looking at a cross-collaboration for next year so that teachers are visiting other teachers' classrooms, and we're able to have some of those cross-conversations. The next piece, you will notice, district and school-based leaders will participate in professional development related to effectively identifying and providing feedback relative to ESC instructional and pedagogical practices. And then August 2017, those are the goals relative to those learning walks as well.
So some of the key next steps in our work with Indian River is codifying this progress monitoring plan and also implementing the refined ESC service delivery model in the next school year. In detail, you didn't see in this presentation, but we will be piloting some new service delivery models for ESC staff and students at select sites. And DMG will be providing some of our processes and resources and materials to support that implementation effort.
Question. 2 minutes.
That's good.
Saying nothing?
I do have a question.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
You have-
You got it. No,
Okay.
you have the floor.
It's a big question, though, so you got 2 minutes to answer it. I don't know. So this is an area, obviously, where a lot of the processes and procedures that we had really needed to be reanalyzed and structured. And you are new to the district.
Yes.
That was a big task, I am sure. Can you tell me in 2 minutes how the district, working with District Management Council has been helpful to you and why it was important for them to be a part of this process?
They have been an integral process in evaluating our overall programming. Being new to the district, I relied on the evaluation as one of the components when we're looking at systems to review what systems are in place, what's working, what may need to be refined. You know, one of the key pieces, again, that we always go back to is the classroom and the individual student. Based on the report that was provided and our collaboration with DMG, we noticed that was where we needed to start. And so really evaluating from day one our secondary schools. And I can say that in July, we started, you know, before I was even on the clock, we started evaluating and communicating with administrators to see how we can revise the service provision for students with disabilities. So I would say that it has been an integral part of our work in setting action planning in place and being systematic about our approach to revise some of our procedures to ensure that students are getting what they need.
Minute and 30, okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions, but we don't have the time. I could tell you it looks good on paper, but I see a lot of complaints ahead on this process. I see a lot of areas where students will be at a disadvantage, not receive services. I see a lot of areas where parents will be upset, but we don't have the time to talk about it. I do have one question that would be really quick, and that would be, what is the difference between the guiding coalition on page 10 and the advisory group on page 2?
Advisory group is, what we have in our plan as a group that you need to convene, and then with Indian River, we decided that the group should be called a guiding coalition because
So they're the same?
collected. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Short.
No, I just want to say that from where we were to where we are going, I think that you are heading in the right direction. And it does look good on paper, and I'm just very optimistic that it's going to come to fruition in the classroom. So I'm excited to where we're going.
Mr. Frost?
No, sir.
I have a question. Isn't there the training that ESE teachers have to have, isn't that pretty strenuous? I mean, that's a specialized area, right? And now we're going to make all the general ed teachers ESE experts? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
It is a specialized area in terms of a certification for exceptional student education, so there is specific coursework that is required. What I will say in terms of our general education teachers, it's also a requirement for general education teachers to participate in a 20-hour recertification class in order to recertify their certificate. We always look at that continuum of service to ensure that students are accessing their least restrictive environment in general ed first. So the answer to that question is a complex one in terms of our students with disabilities. The majority of our students with disabilities are participating in general education classrooms for the majority of their day. So we want to ensure that we level the playing field and that we provide our general education teachers and our ESE teachers with the tools that they need in order for students to be successful.
And so you're telling me you're going to be providing those general ed teachers with extra support from these, I guess you'd call it, ESE, professional ESE teachers?
Well,
and they're going to be a part of that classroom.
There has to be a systematic approach to it, and one of the pieces with the approval of the board of ensuring that is having our behavior intervention specialists that are going to have more contact time with teachers and with students, as well as our resource specialists, to have that oversight at the school and to assist the leadership team in coordinating those efforts to ensure that teachers are receiving the supports that they need.
Thank you very much.
So the short answer is yes, they're going to receive additional supports.
And we just approved some
You did, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was the thing on slide 21, since we had to kind of go through things very quickly, you'll notice that the repurposing of the student support specialist to the behavior intervention support specialist was part of the plan, and also making sure there was an ESE resource specialist at every school. So we talked about at our last business meeting the fact that we are actually investing more resources in this direction for next year. So that was kind of what I was talking about a little bit today when I said we went through each department, and in not every department did we find savings. In ESE, this is an area where we've actually increased costs because we're putting more resources at the schools. We actually put more ESE teaching units at some of our schools than we did this year as we planned for next year. So a lot of the concerns that were shared with the board during the year about student behavior and things, a lot of them were associated with ESE misbehavior in the classroom, or students who were classified as ESE misbehaving in the classroom. So we believe a lot of that will be addressed by these new support models. Also the fact that we've added additional teaching units to some of the schools where we saw high incidences of misbehavior, we think it's going to address that as well. But that's what I was hinting at earlier today when I said in some of our departments, we didn't reduce costs, we've actually increased costs. So when we get to the final budget, you'll see that in some areas we actually have increased the budget allocations for those departments for next year, and this is one of them. But it's because the work we did with DMC, then DMG, showed that we were not providing the service that we needed to our students.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? Too bad, we're out of time. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.